Book 8, The 10,000 Kilometer Journey Chapter 25, When Experts Join Forces. This loud shout by the black-robed man not only frightened Linley and the Archmagus Necromancer, it also startled Lamson and the other 3 experts of the 9th rank on the 2nd floor. What's going on? Why is Zartz gone? Lamson immediately pushed open his door, walking to the 2nd floor corridor and barking angrily. At this time, the other 3 combatants of the 9th rank came out of their rooms as well. Within Zisler's room, hearing the loud shouts, the look on Zisler's face changed. He immediately instructed the nearby Linley, "You killed 1 combatant of the 9th rank, but there are 5 remaining. I will take care of 3 of them. You handle the other 2. Don't tell me you aren't able to do so." Zisler was quite confident in his ability to deal with 3 combatants of the 9th rank. "You only need to kill 1. Linley said calmly. At the same time, Linley quietly awaited the opponents to gather outside. When they did so, Bebe and Hera would ambush them from behind, while he and the Archmagus Necromancer would attack from the front. This pincer attack would make it even harder for their opponents to flee. Hearing Linley's words, Zisler couldn't help but sneer, "You really dare to make all sorts of wild boasts. Bro." At this moment, the black-robed man saw the corpse of Zartz. He immediately let out a howl of grief, while also noticing that there were now 2 men inside the room. Like a gust of wind, the 4 other combatants of the 9th rank descended from the higher floors. Lamson and the others stared at Zisler, then at Linley. The expressions on their face changed. "Hello, everyone. Last time we fought, it wasn't as fun as it should have been. Let's play again." The Archmagus Necromancer, Zisler, beamed happily at the 5 combatants of the 9th rank in front of him. "The anti-magic shackles are broken," a silver-haired old expert of the 9th rank said in shock. But Lamson was staring at Linley. "Cardinal Lamson. Long time no see." Linley held his adamantine heavy sword in his hands, his dark gold eyes shooting a cold, merciless glare towards these men. Almost all of the high-level combatants of the Radiant Church knew about the terrifying appearance Linley had when transformed. "Linley." Lamson's voice was very low, and his facial expression was dark. "You are the Linley who killed 6 of my comrades?" Zart's younger brother, that black-robed man, stared at Linley in disbelief. "How is that possible?" The Archmagus Necromancer, Zisler, also stared at Linley in surprise. From the reaction of the Radiant Church's squad, this Draconian who had rescued him apparently was quite formidable. "Oh, your name is Linley? And it seems you are even more famous than me?" Linley just stared coldly at the enemies. "Enough talk. Let's do this. My men are ready. We can move at any time." The Archmagus Necromancer, Zisler, laughed delightedly. Suddenly, 2 golden skeletal archers manifested behind him. Linley was startled. He had heard that necromantic magic possessed the Wraith Call ability, but this was the first time he had seen it in action. These 2 golden skeletal archers had auras that weren't the slightest bit weaker than combatants of the 9th rank. "Linley, you seem to be quite powerful. Let's have a little competition and see who kills more." Zisler laughed delightedly, while at this moment, 3 powerful, 3-meter-tall golden-furred zombies appeared at the door. These golden-furred zombies had jade-green eyes. 2 golden skeletal archers, and 3 golden-furred zombies. Each of them had the power of a combatant of the 9th rank. Combined, they made up a force of 5 combatants of the 9th rank. Lamson looked at Zisler, then looked at Linley. Grinding his teeth, he ordered in a low voice, "Retreat. We leave now." Lamson truly did not wish to give this order. In order to capture Zisler, they had sacrificed so much. But once they learned the secrets of necromantic magic from Zisler, the Radiant Church would totally be capable of secretly raising an entire squad of necromancers. "Bebe. Haru. Now." Linley mentally ordered. "Kill." The Archmagus Necromancer, Zisler, issued a callous order, while at the same time he began to continue mumbling the words to yet another magical spell. Although these skeletal archers and golden-furred zombies had the power of 9th rank combatants, they were only equivalent to early stage 9th rank combatants. He, Zisler, had 2 summons which he was extremely proud of. In order to subdue these 2 creatures he had encountered in the plane of undead, he had expended a tremendous amount of effort. Zisler's lips were constantly moving as he mumbled the words to this spell. The difficulty of summoning these 2 undead was far greater than the first 5. Flee, now! The undead dragon is about to arrive. The 2 special executors, the 2 ascetics, and the cardinal all hurriedly fled from the courtyard. But right at this moment, swish! Swish! 2 golden arrows split the air, piercing directly towards the 2 ascetics. At the same moment, 2 black blurs suddenly appeared from outside the courtyard. Lampson! Not one of you will escape! Linley's callous voice rang out, while at the same time, Linley charged towards them like a bolt of lightning. Linley's movement speed really was incredibly fast. As a peak stage 9th rank combatant who had inherited the speed inherent to the armored Razorback WIRM, was supported by the supersonic spell, and also borrowed the imposing force of the world. Linley's speed far surpassed those 2 special executors, to say nothing of the ascetics and the cardinal. Roar! The Black Loud Panther, Haru, charged recklessly at one of the special executors, clawing and biting at him. Terrified, the special executor immediately chopped viciously at the Black Loud Panther with his sword. Ah! The special executor's skull was caved in by the panther's paw, while his sword hadn't managed to injure Haru in the slightest. HRMPH. The Black Loud Panther was filled with contempt. In the past, Linley had used the adamantine heavy sword while at the peak stage of the 9th rank in dragon form, yet still hadn't been able to do anything. In the end, he had been forced to rely on both the supergravity field as well as the air wings spells before he could force the panther to submit. In terms of defense, the Black Loud Panther was even more formidable than Linley, and only a whisker inferior to Bebe. Slash! Slash! Catching the special executor totally off guard, Bebe pierced straight through his defense, driving his claws into the man's chest and ripping the man's heart out. In the blink of an eye, the 2 magical beasts had killed 2 combatants of the 9th rank. Gruol! The Black Loud Panther turned and attacked the nearby ascetic. The ascetic was truly stunned. 2 magical beasts had just popped up out of nowhere and killed 2 special executors. Bebe charged towards the other ascetic as well. The 2 ascetics and Lampson were all truly in states of shock. They specialized in light-style magic, but all magic took time to set up. The spells they could instacast wouldn't be of use against these 2 magical beasts. Lampson! Linley let out a loud roar. Wielding his adamantine heavy sword, like a demonic god, he chopped down with his black adamantine heavy sword, causing the very air to vibrate with the force of the blow. Lampson discovered, to his terror, that the space above him had been totally locked in. Lin! In the moment of his death, Lampson thought back to that first time he had encountered Linley. That was the day that the sculpture, awakening from the dream, was being auctioned. At that time, Linley was an optimistic, joyful young genius. But a few years later, Linley had become so frightening. And today, Linley was going to take his life. Bam! Before Lampson's unwilling eyes, Linley's adamantine heavy sword slashed down directly on his body. At this moment, Linley managed to link together some of the scattered insights he had regarding the new level he was trying to attain. It was like the pulse of the world itself. Those deep tremors. Those irresistible vibrations. The terrifying force that the adamantine heavy sword was carrying suddenly transformed into a pulse-like rhythm which entered Lampson's body. Lampson's entire body trembled once, and then he collapsed to the ground. Not a single wound could be seen on Lampson's body, but blood was flowing from Lampson's ear and nose. If someone were to cut open Lampson's skin, they would discover that Lampson's internal organs had all disintegrated. At this time, Bebe and Haru finished off the 2 remaining ascetics. This killing spree was simply too perfectly formulated. The undead creatures which Zisler had summoned, along with Linley's fearsome appearance, had actually frightened Lampson's group so much that they had directly fled, but just as they had reached the walls, they were caught totally off guard by Bebe and Heru, these two unspeakably terrifying magical beasts. The end result was plain for everyone to see. Bebe, Heru, and Linley had killed 5 combatants of the 9th rank. If they counted the person whom Linley had killed at the beginning, they had killed 6. Gruel. Right at this moment, in the middle of the courtyard, the space began to rumble as a dimensional crack appeared. An enormous, black dragon's head stretched out through the dimensional crack. Wraith call undead dragon. But Zisler stared at Linley, as well as his black shadow mouse and the black loud panther, Heru. He was totally shocked, totally speechless. Just now, he had been very arrogant, going so far as to say that he would deal with 3 of them, if Linley could handle 2. But before his undead creatures had killed a single person, Linley and his magical beasts had killed all of the combatants. Mr. Zisler, there's no need to finish summoning this undead dragon, I think. Or did you want to test it out against Bebe, or perhaps Heru? Linley said calmly. The leathery face of the Archmagus Necromancer, Zisler, twitched. And then, he banished the undead dragon back to the plane of undead. Linley, those 2 magical beasts of yours are indeed rather powerful. But my undead dragon isn't weak either. What's more, the undead dragon isn't the only creature I possess. I also have an ancient wight. Zisler sneered. You must understand, so long as the undead realm remains, the army available to a necromancer is endless. Linley truly was frightened by Zisler's words. Actually, in his heart, Zisler knew that taming an undead creature in the undead realm was no easy feat. They had to be subdued one at a time, after all. In the past, when he had subdued this undead dragon, he had sacrificed many other undead creatures. Let's hurry up and clean up this courtyard. Don't let the Radiant Church know what happened here. Linley said immediately. Zisler immediately began to issue orders to his undead creatures. Those 2 golden skeletal archers and the 3 golden furred zombies very obediently began to dispose of the corpses. They were quite efficient. Very soon, all the corpses had vanished. Linley. Zisler looked at Linley with interest. From what Lampson said, it seems you are quite famous. Tell me about yourself? Linley glanced at Zisler. Shut your mouth. Quiet. Seeing Linley's absolutely emotionless golden eyes, Zisler began to laugh. Linley, it seems as though you have quite a large grudge against the Radiant Church, am I right? So what if I do? Linley responded this time. What sort of grudge? Zisler immediately asked. I won't stop till one of us is destroyed. Linley's voice was quiet, but it was like the sinister wind which blew in the undead realm, capable of making one's soul shudder. Zisler's eyes immediately lit up. He excitedly said, Haha, good. Linley, it seems you have some ability. How about this? You assist me, and together, we will deal with the Radiant Church. Me, assist you? You be the leader? Linley looked at Zisler. Zisler had to admit to himself that he felt just the slightest bit uncomfortable when Linley stared at him with those dark golden eyes. No need to differentiate between who is the lead, and who is not. The 2 of us will work together. As a necromancer, Zisler's close combat abilities were very poor. In addition, his undead creatures took a certain amount of time to summon. Linley's dark gold eyes stared at Zisler for quite some time. Fine. I accept. Linley finally spoke. Linley had to admit that joining forces with a necromancer could indeed make him stronger. Zisler immediately exulted. Haha, wonderful. With the 2 of us joining forces, what have we to fear? Heidens, there will come a day when I kill you, you old bastard. Linley, who in the Radiant Church do you wish to kill? Zisler was certain that Linley had to have had a major grudge against someone in the Radiant Church, for him to hate it so. Who? Linley shook his head. I intend to destroy the Radiant Church and tear out its roots. The Radiant Church? Zisler was truly stunned for a moment, then he laughed loudly. Ha, wonderful, excellent. When the time comes, we will kill Haydns together and annihilate the Radiant Church. But Linley's face was cold and emotionless. Let's go. Linley led Bebe and Hera towards the exit. Where to? Zisler immediately followed. Do you have any destination? Linley asked. None. Zisler shook his head. Linley said calmly, then starting today, just follow me. As he spoke, Linley led Bebe and Heru into the darkness. Zisler started, then mumbled to himself, it seems that by following this Linley, the future will be quite exciting. And thus, this 800-year-old Archmagus Necromancer followed Linley into the night. Book 8, The 10,000 Kilometer Journey Chapter 26, Mutual Trust. There were no stars in the night sky, nor was there a moon. Linley and the Archmagus Necromancer, Zisler, the Black Cloud Panther, Heru, and Bebe made their way through the secluded alleyway. At this time, Linley returned to his human form. Crackle! Linley's ripped and torn pants were instantly consumed by flame. And then, with a flip of the hand, Linley retrieved yet another pair of pants as well as a form-fitting black shirt. In the blink of an eye, Linley redressed himself. Oh, this Linley kid is even more special than I thought. Zisler's green eyes stared at Linley. How could Zisler not know what had just happened? Linley clearly had an interspatial ring. He, Zisler, had an interspatial ring of his own as well. Over 400 years ago, in the mountain range of magical beasts, when he was collecting undead slaves, he had accidentally raised a half-shattered skeleton that had been dead for who knows how many years. On the skeleton's finger, there was an interspatial ring. At the time, Zisler had been wildly overjoyed. Based on his observations of the surroundings, Zisler guessed that this skeleton most likely had engaged in battle against magical beasts countless thousands of years ago, and then crawled into a deep valley where it had died of its heavy injuries. But after thousands of years, the local geography had changed and the valley had been sealed off. As an 800-year-old Archmagus Necromancer, it was understandable for him to be in possession of an interspatial ring. But this young man in front of him clearly was very young. Where did he acquire one? Let's move, fast. Linley finished dressing himself and let out a quiet order. Linley, I find myself more and more curious about you. Zisler's laugh was so very sinister. Linley glanced at him sideways. Zisler, remember. In the future, without my permission, you are not to call me by my real name. Just call me Lay. Zisler's eyebrows twitched. I understand. You are afraid your identity will be revealed. Actually, Linley's name was a relatively famous one in the O'Brien Empire as well. But this was primarily in the field of sculpture. Sculpture aficionados knew a great deal about Linley. A 16-year-old who was able to carve a sculpture on the level of the 10 masterpieces? How could they not be filled with admiration towards him? Unfortunately, Zisler, that old Philistine, had no interest in sculpture. They hurried along the way. Where are we going? Zisler asked quietly while maintaining his high rate of movement. Outside the city. Linley said calmly. But this isn't the direction of the city gate, is it? Zisler asked suspiciously. Must we leave the city by the city gate? Linley glanced at Zisler, who immediately understood what Linley meant. But it isn't 10 o'clock at night yet. The city gates haven't shut yet. We absolutely can depart by the city gates if we wish. Zisler objected. I'm not certain of the forces which the Radiant Church has in the prefectural city of Serre. Perhaps they have people planted amongst the gate guards here. If you go by that route, it's possible that they will recognize you. After all, aside from those 6 experts from the headquarters of the Radiant Church, there are others who have seen you today and knew that you were heading towards that residence. Linley said calmly. Zisler nodded. On the way to being locked into the residence, there had indeed been another group of people within the residence, all of whom clearly were the radiant Chich's people in the prefectural city of Serre. Originally, there were servants there to serve Lamson and the others as well. But Lamson was extremely careful. He was afraid of the possibility that these people had been infiltrated, and thus all of the servants had been sent away. Linley and Zisler quickly arrived at the high city walls. Those 20-meter-high walls were more than enough to render Zisler speechless. "There's no way I can get over." Zisler was quite blunt. He was an archmagus necromancer. His physical condition was on par with an ordinary fighter of the third rank. But for him to leap over a 20-30-meter-high wall was impossible. "Haru." Linley looked at his black cloud panther. "Gruol." This 2-meter-tall, 4-meter-long, handsome black panther, Haru, stared at the archmagus necromancer Zisler with his cold eyes. "Ride on Haru's back," Linley instructed. Zisler no longer hesitated, immediately leaping onto Haru's back. Standing on Haru's neck, Bebe also gave Zisler a challenging look. Zisler, however, didn't dare contend against these two magical beasts. He had clearly seen the results of that battle just then. Given his judgment, he could clearly tell that both the Black Shadow Mouse and the Black Panther were magical beasts of the 9th rank. Without having his undead minions ready, he, an archmagus necromancer, didn't dare irritate magical beasts of the 9th rank. "Let's go." With a leap, Linley flew into the air like an arrow, vaulting over 30 meters with a single bound, easily flipping past the wall and landing on the other side. Swoosh! With a mighty bound, Haru transformed into a black blur and easily leapt past the 20-meter-high city wall. On the wild grass outside the city. "Whoa! This panther is quite fast." Zisler clutched his chest, letting out a shocked breath. As he spoke, he dismounted. "Stay on," Linley immediately said. "Haru, let's go back now." Linley immediately executed the supersonic spell on himself. Linley quickly hurried towards their mountain valley home, moving as fast as the wind, but Haru easily maintained pace with him. Scant minutes later, Zisler and Linley arrived at the mountain valley. "Starting today, you will live here. If you want to leave, it's best if you change your appearance first," Linley said calmly. Looking at his surroundings, Zisler nodded with satisfaction. "I like secluded areas. This place is very much suited for my training." That very night, Linley built a wooden room for Zisler as well. Late at night, when Linley was seated on the grass, preparing to quietly train, he suddenly sensed that from Zisler's wooden room, there was a dense, deathly aura emanating from within. No wonder Zisler liked secluded areas. In places where there were many people, Zisler wouldn't dare train in such an open, unrestrained manner. Necromancer. Thinking back to the information he had read about necromancers, Linley couldn't help but feel some fear. Generally speaking, the older a necromancer was, the more powerful his spiritual energy was, and the more terrifyingly powerful he was. Because, with enough time, they could amass an enormous number of undead minions. At the courtyard, Zisler's undead minions were all of the 9th rank. Most likely, he also has an ocean's worth of middle-rank undead minions as well. Linley had heard that an archmagus necromancer could be considered an entire terrifying army by himself. An archmagus necromancer was totally capable of summoning a massive army of hundreds of thousands of minions to do battle. And, in wars, as long as he could kill his opponents, the necromancer would be able to create undead slaves out of their corpses, controlling the deceased warriors of his opponents. His opponents' corpses would do his bidding and wage war against his enemies. A necromancer's army only grew with each battle. But of course, the prerequisite for that was that the necromancer have sufficient spiritual energy. In addition, I've heard it said that necromancers have more than just the wraith call ability or the ability to create undead slaves. I've heard that there are some unique, sinister necromantic spells. Necromancers were most famous for their plagues. In historical records, there was indeed a case where, because of a single necromancer, a huge epidemic had occurred, costing tens of millions of people their lives. This was also the reason why, when Linley had seen Holmer using poison, Linley had wondered if Holmer was a necromancer. Dawn. The sky slowly brightened. The Archmagus necromancer, Zisler, retracted his spiritual energy out of the undead realm and back into his body. Opening his eyes, a small smile appeared on his face. Yesterday really was my lucky day. Not only did I regain my liberty, in the undead realm, I even managed to subdue a Black Knight captain. Although it cost me one of my golden-furred zombies, the cost was worth it. Zisler was very happy. Although golden-furred zombies were also of the 9th rank, compared to a Black Knight captain, they were much weaker. A Black Knight captain was roughly on the same level of power as the undead dragon. It could be considered a peak stage creature of the 9th rank. Right now, under Zisler's control were 3 undead minions of the peak stage 9th rank: an undead dragon, an ancient wight, and a Black Knight captain. At the same time, he also had available to him 2 golden-furred zombies and 2 golden skeletal archers. 3 peak stage 9th rank minions, 4 ordinary 9th rank minions. This was the most powerful force available to Zisler. As for undead minions of the 8th and 7th ranks, he had far more. After all, in the undead realm, a high-class undead could enslave many lower-ranked undead. For example, those 2 golden skeletal archers controlled an army of 500,000 skeletons. As for the Black Knight captain, he had a number of Black Knights of the 8th rank under his command. A necromancer, especially an 800-year-old Archmagus necromancer, definitely could be considered a terrifying one-man army. This was no joke. HRM? As he walked out of his wooden room, Zisler's eyes immediately widened. Because right now, Linley was quietly standing on top of the pond, his eyes closed. His body seemed to be feather-light, and he didn't sink down at all into the water. Zisler was extremely amazed. Zisler knew very well that Linley was not a saint-level combatant. After transforming, Linley was only a peak stage 9th rank, while in his human form, he was most likely even weaker. But right now, Linley was standing there as though he weighed nothing at all. Mr. Zisler. Linley suddenly opened his eyes, a rare smile on his face. At the same time, he walked over on the surface of the pond, as easily as though he were walking on solid land. We can be considered allies now. I want to know a few things about the Radiant Church. Linley said directly. Zisler chuckled, then nodded. Even if you didn't ask me, I would tell you. Right. Before this, we should show some mutual trust in each other. I really don't know much about you at all. Linley. Full name, Linley Baruch. 21 years old. Beneath the saint rank, no one in the world is a match for me. Linley said calmly, but his words were extremely confident. As a peak stage dragon blood warrior of the 9th rank, he could already be considered invincible save against saint levels. When combining that with the adamantine heavy sword which he could use with the impose level at maximum proficiency now, and more importantly with Linley's supportive abilities as a dual-element magus of the 8th rank, Linley's power could rise to an amazing level. Dragon blood warrior. No wonder. Only now did Zisler understand that Linley wasn't a draconian. Suddenly, Zisler stared. What did you say? 21 years old? And? Linley looked at Zisler. Linley knew very well that this Archmagus necromancer was definitely a very proud person. If Linley wasn't able to totally overawe him, most likely their teamwork would be very difficult to manage. How is that possible? Zisler was rather shocked. But then, he laughed. Haha, I'm different. The older we necromancers are, the more of an advantage we have. This year, I'll be 866 years old. Zisler proudly announced his age. Linley, you say that you are invincible aside from the saint levels. I don't really believe it. Zisler said calmly. My army of undead minions reaches into the millions, and I have 3 peak stage undead minions of the 9th rank. At this time, both sides were trying to forcibly suppress the other. In addition, by letting each other know exactly how powerful they were, they would be able to coordinate their teamwork better as well. Zisler. Linley glanced at him coldly. I admit that if I were to fight against your entire army of undead, I wouldn't be able to fight through them. However, I have 2 peak stage magical beasts of my own. And I've forgotten to tell you something. I'm not only a dragon blood warrior. I am also a dual element magus of the 8th rank. Your human wave tactics are of no use against me. Zisler was now totally stunned. He could accept that as a dragon blood warrior, Linley could reach the peak of the 9th rank as a warrior at 21 years of age. But a 21-year-old dual element magus of the 8th rank was absolutely terrifying. After all, the hardest part of magus training was cultivating spiritual energy. There was simply no way to avoid it. For a 21-year-old to have such a terrifying amount of spiritual energy was something which Zisler didn't even dare to think about. A dual element magus of the 8th rank. 21 years old? Zisler murmured. Is this the number 1 magus genius in all of history? When Linley was 17, he had reached the 7th rank as a magus. This was the 2nd youngest in history. But a 21-year-old dual element magus of the 8th rank? This was the first in history. When I reached the 8th rank as a necromancer, I believe I was around 400 years old. When Zisler thought about how old he had been, he found that there was nothing more he could say. Book 8, The 10,000 Kilometer Journey Chapter 27, Secrets of the Church. Zisler knew that for a 21-year-old to reach such a level meant that in the future, he would eventually leave Zisler far behind in the dust. We can be considered to know something about each other's abilities now. Didn't you want to know about the Radiant Church? A look of self-confidence was on Zisler's face. With regards to the secrets of the Radiant Church, he, Zisler, probably knew as much as the high-level members of the church itself. Speak. Linley immediately began to listen carefully. Zisler nodded. Simply put, the Radiant Church's power, on the most superficial level, includes missionaries, priests, bishops, vicars, and cardinals. They also have the 8 ace regiments of knights, as well as powerful knights of the Radiant Temple. This can be considered their second military force. In addition, they also have the servants of the ecclesiastical tribunal as well as a large number of ascetics. Hearing this, Linley was silent. He knew all this already. But aside from these overtly visible forces, they also have 2 hidden forces. These words immediately aroused Linley's interest. Ascetics and executors of the ecclesiastical tribunal were considered their overtly visible forces. These 2 hidden forces are extremely formidable, more powerful than any of their other forces. The first hidden force is known as the Zealots. Zisler frowned. These Zealots are very terrifying. They have a very strange power which is not light-style power. I can't explain it either. This was the first time that Linley had heard the term Zealot. And the second force? Linley asked. Zisler's face was solemn. The second force is the most powerful force the Radiant Church has to offer, their true trump card. They will never use this force unless things reach the final, most critical point. These are descended angels. Angels. Linley's heart shook. In the past, at the Ernst Institute, Linley had read quite a bit regarding angels. The impression he had of angels was that they were powerful, extremely powerful. Because of the restrictions of having fleshly bodies, descended angels will not be at the peak of their power. However, even the weakest descended angel will be a combatant of the 9th rank. Many are saint levels. Descended angels are the true, most terrifying force available to the Radiant Church. Zisler sighed. Linley's heart was filled with shock. Zisler, I've read about angels before. The descriptions of the most powerful angels say that they have the power of deities. If the Radiant Church has a large number of powerful angels, they shouldn't be in their current state. Linley probed. Zisler shook his head. No. The power of the descended angels will depend on the human vessels the Radiant Church provides. Human vessels? Linley looked questioningly at Zisler. Right. Angels are unable to create dimensional rifts and directly descend into our world. Their only option is to use some special methods and descend into the body of a human. The strength or weakness of this human body will determine how much power the angel can wield. Zisler explained. Linley, although this world has 9th rank combatants and saint-level combatants, if it weren't for their battle chi, their physical strength would be quite a bit weaker. Normal humans can only reach the 6th rank based on their muscular strength. Linley agreed with this assessment. When an angel descends into a body with muscular strength of the 6th rank, they can at most wield power of the 9th rank. Thus, the Radiant Church needs bodies of the 7th rank, or even higher. Zisler said with certainty. Even more powerful bodies? Linley frowned. Although normal human bodies can generally only reach the 6th rank, there are still some geniuses who are extremely powerful. Since youth, they possess boundless strength. It can be said that they are inherently powerful. These people with special natural gifts might reach the limit of the 7th rank based on muscle power alone. And a body which can naturally reach the 7th rank in power should be enough to allow an angel to wield power of the saint level. Hearing Zisler's words, Linley couldn't help but frown. Because Linley's great-grandfather had been able to train to the 7th level just based on his muscular strength. But afterwards, Linley's great-grandfather had died in battle. In the past, Linley had never questioned this, but now. Could it have been possible that my great-grandfather was actually taken away by the Radiant Church for his body? Linley was guessing. In truth, all of the 4 supreme warriors possessed tremendous innate physical gifts. All of them could train to an extremely powerful level just based on muscle strength. Zisler continued, this has caused the Radiant Church to scour the entire world for people with powerful bodies. The more powerful the body, the more powerful the descended angel will be. But it's of no use. In this era, the Yulan continent has 4 deity-level combatants. Faced with these deity-level combatants, saint-level combatants can do nothing but die. 4 deity-level combatants? Linley stared at Zisler in surprise. It seemed as though Zisler knew about the existence of that expert from the mountain range of magical beasts. Zisler saw Linley's surprise. Laughing, he said, the 4 deity-level combatants are humanity's war god and high priest, the magical beast who is the king of the forest of darkness, and the magical beast king of the mountain range of magical beasts who appeared on Apocalypse Day. Linley, when I was being taught the secrets to necromantic magic, I learned that the bodies of deities are at the saint level in terms of physical strength alone. Zisler said with certainty. A deity-level combatant could be said to be composed of his divine body, his divine spark, and the divine power he wielded. There was no way a saint-level combatant could injure them at all. Thus, in order to wield the power of a deity, the body alone must be at the saint level in physical strength. Most likely, the Radiant Church is not able to manifest a deity-level angel. Even if high-class angels were to descend, they wouldn't be able to use their deific power, due to being restricted by their physical bodies. Zisler said confidently. The teachings of necromantic magic were abstruse and profound. In addition, Zisler was over 8 centuries old. He truly knew many things. Deity-level combatants. Linley's heart swelled with amazement. Any of these 4 most powerful experts of the Yulan continent could shake the world with their might. On the Apocalypse Day, the appearance of Dylan had caused both the Radiant Church and the Cult of Shadows to flee and avoid him. The Radiant Church had their descended angels. But then, what did the Cult of Shadows possess, for them to be equal to the Radiant Church for countless, untold years? Despite that, both powers combined still didn't dare to offend that Dylan, the king of the mountain range of magical beasts. From this, one could clearly tell how ineffable the power of a deity-level combatant was. Who knows when I will have power like that? Linley was filled with eagerness and hope towards this sort of power. Zisler continued to tell Linley a great deal of information regarding the Radiant Church. The Radiant Church cares the most about two things. The first is finding extremely powerful bodies. The second is to find extremely pure souls. As Zisler said this, Linley's face changed. Pure souls? His own mother had died as a result of this. Supposedly, the Radiant Sovereign which the Radiant Church worships only needs two things. The first is the worship of his followers. The second is pure souls. The purer the souls offered by the Church, the greater the gifts that the Radiant Sovereign will bestow upon them. By now, Linley had a good understanding of the Radiant Church. The reason why the Radiant Church sacrificed pure souls to the Radiant Sovereign was the same reason they searched for powerful bodies. It was because they wanted to acquire powerful descended angels. Linley, in the Yulon continent, the Radiant Church has hidden reserves of power in every location. After all, the power of a religion is extremely formidable. Zisler said with a sigh. But in the four great empires, the Radiant Church is fairly weak. In the anarchic lands, however, their influence is quite powerful. Anarchic lands? A map drifted to the forefront of Linley's memories. East of the O'Brien Empire, there was an area which was slightly larger than the O'Brien Empire itself. In the center of this area was an enormous forest, the Forest of Darkness. The Forest of Darkness was thousands of kilometers wide, and thousands of kilometers long as well. This enormous forest took up half of the land in this area. North of the Forest of Darkness, were the 18 northern duchies, roughly the same size as one of the O'Brien Empire's administrative provinces. South of the Forest of Darkness were the 48 anarchic duchies. The total area of these duchies was roughly half the size of the O'Brien Empire. This could be considered the most politically chaotic area in the Yulon continent, as the 48 anarchic duchies engaged in constant warfare. The Radiant Church and the Cult of Shadows are the two most powerful religions in the anarchic lands. Zisler said. Linley could imagine. In the war-torn anarchic lands, it was only natural for those poor commoners to turn to religion for solace. All right, I've talked so much that my mouth is dry. Let's eat breakfast. Zisler laughed loudly. Zisler and Linley were both in possession of interspatial rings, and both their rings contained fine wine. Drinking wine while eating freshly plucked fruit, the two of them continued to discuss their plans for dealing with the Radiant Church. Oh, right. I suddenly remember something. Zisler suddenly said. What's that? Linley looked at Zisler. Zisler chuckled. This time, when I was being escorted under guard, we ran into another squad of the Radiant Church's men. This squad was also escorting a group of people. Who? An expert like you? Linley asked. If they were experts, then he and Zisler would go rescue them. After all, each of them had enmity with the Radiant Church. If they banded together, they would only be stronger. No. It was two adorable girls. Zisler shook his head. Originally, when that squad and Lampson's squad met up, I saw those girls. I must say, those two girls were as innocent and pure as angels. Based on my familiarity with souls, I am quite certain that these two girls have extremely pure souls. Practitioners of necromantic magic, compared with the other types of magi, were undoubtedly the most experienced when it came to souls. However, in the eyes of the Radiant Church, my importance far outweighed the importance of those two girls. Lampson and the others took me away at high speed, while the two girls were taken away by another squad, which was moving quite a bit more slowly. Zisler said. So your intention is? Linley looked questioningly at Zisler. Zisler chuckled. My intention is for us to go rescue those two girls. After all, that squad didn't have many experts in it. It only had a single combatant of the 8th rank. In the eyes of Zisler and Linley, an expert of the 8th rank really was nothing. How is it that an archmagus necromancer like you would be so kind-hearted as to go rescue two girls? Linley looked at Zisler. Zisler laughed. I delight in disrupting the affairs of the Radiant Church whenever I can. And what's more, with such extremely pure souls, the two of them might be suitable for training in necromantic magic. The requirements for learning necromantic magic were terrifyingly high. This was why in the entire Yulon continent, the number of necromancers was extremely low. The soul was a person's most important quality, and even the Radiant Sovereign desired to acquire pure souls. From this, one could tell how important a pure soul was. In order to learn necromantic magic, an extremely pure soul was needed. You should know what trajectory they were on, right? Linley asked. Zisler nodded his head. The path they took should be identical to the path that I had been taken on, unless this squad has already received word of the deaths of Lamson and his men. Only then might they suddenly change their direction. Then let's go. Linley immediately rose. Gruol. Bebe and Heru, who had been lying on the nearby grass, both stood up. These two magical beasts were very excited. By their nature, magical beasts were violent and barbaric, loving to do battle. Right now? Zisler was a bit startled. We've destroyed all trace of Lamson and his men. Even if the Radiant Chich's people discovered that the manor was empty, they probably would only think that Lamson and his men had left. They wouldn't discover that Lamson is dead this fast. Even if they found out that Lamson and his men were dead, they wouldn't be able to send the message to the other squad so quickly. Leave nothing to chance at all. We will immediately set out on the same path that you were taken on and trace our way back. Linley said immediately. Zisler, helpless against Linley, could only shake his head, let out a sigh, then rise to his feet as well. Book 8, The 10,000 Kilometer Journey Chapter 28, Flower-like Sisters. Dawn. The air was clear and fresh. Ruskin Luosijan was leading his two subordinates as they moved at high speed in the direction of the manor where Lamson and the others had settled into last night. I must make sure that we take excellent care of Lord Lamson and the others. A single word from Lamson could most likely get us all promoted. Ruskin was feeling rather frustrated though. Unfortunately, it seemed as though Lord Lamson is being extremely cautious. They didn't allow a single attendant to enter the manor. As he was thinking these things, Ruskin walked to the gate. What's going on? The gate isn't shut? Ruskin frowned. He knew that Lamson and the other lords were on a very important matter. They definitely wouldn't leave the door open. He entered the courtyard. As he did, he felt that the courtyard was a bit too quiet. "My lords!" Ruskin called out. But his voice echoed out in the courtyard without any response. "The two of you, look around for me. I'll go upstairs and see what I can find." Ruskin had a very bad feeling about this. He immediately headed to the second floor, where Lamson and the others' rooms had been located. Every single door on the second floor was open. None were closed. Entering Lamson's room, Ruskin immediately frowned. The bed was in a used state, clearly not made. At the same time, at the head of the bed, there was a backpack. This isn't right. Ruskin immediately entered another room. Indeed, the bed there was also in a messy state, and a backpack was on a table. As of yet, Ruskin hadn't seen any problems, but he felt this wasn't quite right. Lord Lamson didn't even have the time to put on the backpack, and the same was true for the other lords as well. Could it be that something important occurred, forcing Lord Lamson and the others to immediately depart? Ruskin frowned. "My lord!" A frantic call from downstairs. Ruskin's face changed, and he immediately rushed down the hallway, then jumped down directly from the balcony to the courtyard. "What is it?" Ruskin looked at his two subordinates. "My lord, there are bloodstains here." The two of them pointed at the wall. Originally, Zisler had ordered his undead minions to destroy all traces of the deceased. Virtually all traces, including bloodstains, had indeed been removed. But when the Black Cloud Panther, Heru, had smashed open that special executor's skull with one paw, blood had splattered everywhere. Although those undead minions were very industrious and careful, there were still a few tiny traces remaining. Bloodstains. And the lords have all disappeared? Staring at the quiet courtyard, Ruskin felt as though an enormous boulder was pressing against his chest. A battle occurred here. As for the lords, could it be that they are in pursuit? Ruskin knew how astonishingly powerful the 6 of these lords were. He didn't believe that someone could kill these 6 lords. Ruskin instructed his 2 subordinates, "The 2 of you, head out immediately towards the provincial capital of Basel. Report this news back." "Yes." But before the 2 subordinates had even reached the provincial capital of Basel, Linley's group had already encountered the 2nd squad midway. "It's them?" Linley, Bebe, Zisler, and Hera were hiding in some tall, wild grass by the roadside. Zisler looked at the 4 knights surrounding a carriage. Nodding, he said, "Right. It's them. The 2 girls should be inside the carriage." "Inside the carriage?" Linley frowned, then looked at Bebe. "Bebe, I expect that the carriage will have more than just those 2 girls. There should be people guarding the girls as well. Bebe, you are physically small. Your assignment will be to enter the carriage at high speed and kill those guards." Zisler nodded. "This squad should also have 6 people, all men. There should be 2 more men inside this carriage. Did you hear that, Bebe? Kill the 2 men inside the carriage." Linley laughed as he rubbed Bebe's head. Bebe hopped onto Linley's shoulders, lifting his little head up confidently as he squeaked at Linley. "Boss! Have I, Bebe, ever let you down?" Linley chortled lovingly. "Let's do this," Linley said to him mentally. Bebe immediately grew solemn as he stared at the carriage with his little eyes. And then, he quietly snuck through the tall grass, drawing closer to the carriage. Within the carriage, there were 2 beautiful, jade-haired identical twin sisters. Their eyes were slightly red and swollen, and they were staring hatefully at the 2 men opposite of them. "You bastards!" One of the 2, the one whose eyes were slightly larger, cursed in a low voice. The 2 men only smiled at them, not minding in the slightest. "Rebecca, don't curse anymore. Cursing these pieces of garbage is a waste of energy. And to think, we believed in the Radiant Church all these years and prayed to the Lord to bring us happiness. Who would have thought that they would be this vile?" The other girl's eyes were also filled with hatred. "Big sis!" Rebecca miserably clutched at her older sister's hand. Rebecca and Lena hailed from the 48 anarchic duchies. They had followed their father in believing in the Radiant Sovereign, but who would have thought that the Radiant Church would kill their parents, then abduct them? With their parents dead, Rebecca and Lena were now without family. And now, their future had turned to ashes. They couldn't see any hope. Father! Mother! Rebecca and Lena began to tremble as they thought of their parents. All these years, their parents had protected them, no matter how much chaos and war there had been in the anarchic lands. But this time... "Lena! Take your little sister and run!" Their father had tightly held onto a combatant of the 7th rank at the last moment of his life. Despite only being a warrior of the 5th rank, their father had managed to drag it out for a few seconds longer. But unfortunately, the Radiant Church's forces were too strong. "God, please rescue us!" Lena was shouting in her heart. "So long as you can rescue us and give us a chance to seek revenge, I am willing to sacrifice everything, including my very soul." She had watched as her parents died. She wanted revenge. Unfortunately, God was too far away from them. How would he be able to sense the desires of these 2 ordinary souls? Slash! Suddenly, a very strange sound rang out. Lena and Rebecca both turned in surprise. They only saw a black blur flash by. Slash! The sound rang out a second time, and blood spurted everywhere. Rebecca and Lena stared in shock. The heads of the 2 men who had been guarding them suddenly slumped down. Half of their neck had been cut off. They were unquestionably dead. Who was it? The twin sisters stared in shock, then suddenly were overjoyed. They knew that someone had rescued them. They looked in all directions, but they couldn't see their savior. Squeak, squeak. A sound rang out from beneath them. Rebecca and Lena both lowered their heads, only to see an adorable little black mouse standing there, holding his head up in a very arrogant fashion. In a very human-like manner, it used its sharp claws to stroke its whiskers. A rat? Both Rebecca and Lena were confused. Bebe immediately grew angry, and he quickly jumped up while waving his little paws around wildly. He suddenly transformed into a black blur, flashing past them. It was the rat? Rebecca and Lena began to understand. Bebe had made no noise at all when he had killed those two. What's more, the carriage wheels continually rumbled as the carriage rolled along the road. The four knights outside hadn't noticed a thing. Ah! Suddenly, a miserable scream from outside. Roar! A furious roar from a beast. Rebecca and Lena looked at each other, then immediately pushed open the carriage door. The carriage driver had already collapsed, his fresh blood staining the carriage. Rebecca and Lena quickly turned to look at the four knights. But all they saw was four devilish flashes of violet light. The three knights didn't have a chance to react before their heads went flying, while the warrior wearing black armor, Linley, landed gracefully in front of the carriage, the adamantine heavy sword on his back. "Hello! You've just been freed," Linley said with a smile. Seeing the powerful youngster in front of them, Rebecca and Lena were both somewhat stunned. In their eyes, those knights were extremely powerful. But it seemed as though to this youngster, those knights weren't even capable of resisting for a moment. Rebecca and Lena. "Hello there!" An ancient voice rang out. Only now did Zisler stand up from amidst the grassy field. Seeing Zisler's bony, decrepit body, as well as his extremely long, white eyebrows, Rebecca and Lena both called out in excitement, "Grandpa Zisler!" They had traveled with Zisler for a time under common guard, so they knew each other. "Grandpa Zisler, who is this lord?" Rebecca and Lena both looked curiously towards Linley. Suddenly, the two sisters noticed an enormous black panther was drawing near them. The panther's cold, eerie eyes made both Rebecca and Lena feel frightened. "Don't be afraid. Haru, stop scaring them!" Linley barked. "Haru!" Haru made a placating voice towards Linley, then lowered his head and moved to the side, no longer daring to go frighten these twin sisters. "Rebecca, Lena, this is Lord Linley. He isn't any weaker than me," Zisler chortled. "Truly?" Rebecca and Lena stared at Linley in shock. It wasn't that they didn't believe Linley was powerful, it was that they had seen how, when Zisler was being escorted, how much the Radiant Church had valued him. His jailers had even a cardinal in their midst. Zisler had bragged to these sisters before about how he was capable of destroying a 1,000,000-man army. It was only because he was surrounded and attacked by over 10 combatants of the 9th rank that he was finally captured. "Grandpa Zisler! It was this adorable mouse who saved us." Rebecca and Lena immediately turned their heads to look at Bebe. Bebe was currently standing on top of the carriage. He smirked at her, and then in the blink of an eye, he scurried onto Linley's shoulders. "You're talking about Bebe? This is a magical beast which Linley tamed." Zisler laughed as he introduced Bebe. Then he looked at Linley. "Linley. Let me introduce you. The younger sister, Rebecca, has slightly larger eyes. This one is the older sister, Lena." Linley smiled and nodded. "Zisler, should we send these two girls back, or?" In Linley's opinion, these two girls were of no use to them. After all, no matter how pure their souls were, that didn't mean they were very powerful. "Grandpa Zisler, we have no place to go." The older sister, Lena, immediately grew frantic. Begging, she said, "Grandpa Zisler, let us come with you. We know that you've killed the Radiant Church's people. We also want to seek revenge for our parents." Grandpa Zisler, we're begging you. Rebecca also beseeched him. Zisler was planning to take these girls with him all along, with the intention of possibly inducting the twins into the dark art of necromantic magic. But he had to get Linley's concurrence as well. Linley, let's just take them along with us. Lena and Rebecca can both cook. We can't always just eat roast meat in the valley, can we? Zisler laughed. Hearing his words, Rebecca and Lena hurriedly said, we can do anything. We can fry, cook, clean. The two of them knew that without anyone to rely on, two beautiful girls such as them would have a disastrous fate. Seeing how highly Zisler seemed to value Linley's opinion, they knew that Linley was undoubtedly an expert as well. This would give them an even greater chance of getting revenge. Linley glanced at the two siblings. Facing their beseeching gaze, he nodded. Fine. Rebecca and Lena's eyes were instantly filled with a radiant, joyful light. Let's go. We're going back. Linley instructed. Linley's group once more returned to the mountain valley, but this time with the addition of these two siblings. The four of them shared one point in common: they were filled with hatred towards the Radiant Church. Book 8, The 10,000 Kilometer Journey Chapter 29, Investigation. The Northwest Administrative Province, one of the 7 major provinces of the O'Brien Empire, was a vast place, with tens of millions of citizens living in it. The Northwest Administrative Province's provincial capital, Basel, was the most developed of the province's cities. Within the walls of Basel alone were over 1 million people. Within Basel, there were many ancient clans as well. Count Peri Pili was a relatively unassuming noble within Basel city. But amongst the ancient clans, he had quite a bit of influence. In addition, he was an extremely amiable person who never fought with others or struggled for influence. Virtually all of the nobles of the city were on good terms with him. "My Lord Count, you've returned." The guard outside the gate to his mansion smiled and bowed. Count Peri was 200 years old, and all his hair had turned silvery white. But his long beard was as resplendent as it had been when he was young. Count Peri nodded slightly towards the guard, laughing warmly. "Oh, you've gotten a haircut. This haircut suits you. Did you get it done at Old Lock's Look place?" Hearing the words of praise, the guard was immediately all smiles. "Right. Mr. Locke is really quite skilled." Beaming, Count Peri entered his mansion. "Count Peri really is a nice man." The guard sighed to himself. Count Peri really was a very kind person. This was the opinion of virtually everyone in the city of Basel. Count Peri didn't like to kill people and didn't like foul language. His every action totally demonstrated the ethics and nobility of a noble gentleman. He entered the inner courtyard. Count Peri's face suddenly sank. What is going on? How could something like this happen multiple times? Count Peri was very frustrated. Just a few days ago, he had received the news that Cardinal Lampson and his ascetics and special executors had disappeared within the prefectural city of Serre. And now, he had received the news that the squad that had been escorting those 2 girls had been killed, and the girls had vanished. Count Peri, after becoming the person responsible for the affairs of the Radiant Church in the Northwest Administrative Province of the O'Brien Empire, hadn't encountered such a thorny problem in a long time. "I hope Lord Lampson hasn't met with any trouble." Peri prayed silently. If those 2 girls had been saved, then they had been saved. It wasn't of major concern. But Lampson and the other 5 were all experts of the 9th rank, and the person they were escorting was an archmagus necromancer of the 9th rank. This affair was the most important affair he had ever encountered after taking on the responsibilities for the Northwest Administrative Province. "My Lord Count." A hawk-nosed, tall, and skinny man with curly hair walked in. Bowing respectfully, he said, "We've already completed our investigations regarding the missing lords." Peri immediately looked at him. "Speak fast." "Based on our sympathizers' reports in the province, the lords still have yet to appear in any other cities. In addition, we've activated our entire network of sympathizers within the prefectural city of Serre, yet we still haven't found anyone who saw the lords leaving the city." The hawk-nosed man replied respectfully. Perry stared. "What?" Perry's heart, previously tense, genuinely began to quiver. Lamson and the other lords couldn't possibly have remained in the prefectural city of Serre this entire time. And if they did stay in Serre, there would be some trace of them. Lamson and the others must have been attacked. It is entirely possible that Lamson and the others could have exited the prefectural city of Serre late at night by leaping past the city walls. But even if that was the case, Lord Lamson should still have reappeared in a different city. Perry was starting to become truly worried. He had an extremely bad premonition. Could it be possible that Lord Lamson encountered the attack of a powerful foe and was killed? Perry didn't dare to believe it. After all, Lamson and the others were all extremely powerful. To kill the 6 of them would require their opponents to number multiple experts of the 9th level, or a saint-level combatant. Perry suddenly looked at the hawk-nosed man. In a cold voice, he ordered, "Go at your fastest speed to find old Pori. Tell him to bring his 3 blue-winged hawks to my study." "Yes, Milord Count." The hawk-nosed man knew exactly how important this situation was. Perry hurriedly walked towards his study, and wrote 3 letters regarding Lamson's squad's affairs. Each copy was given to a different blue-winged hawk and addressed to be delivered to the Sacred Isle. Ever since the holy capital, Fenley City, had been destroyed, the Radiant Church set up their new headquarters on an island not too far away from the Yulon continent. They publicly announced this place as being the Sacred Isle. Within the secluded valley outside the prefectural city of Serre. Right now, there were 4 wooden rooms here. One was for Linley and Bebe, another was for Zisler, the third was for Rebecca and Lena, while the last one was for Haru. Dawn. The valley was very quiet and peaceful. A pair of twin beauties, so lovely they seemed to be an illusion, were chatting and laughing while washing some clothes. These clothes belonged to them, Linley, and Zisler. Within the valley, they handled all the cooking and cleaning. "Big sis. Do you think Grandpa Zisler gets tired from spending all his time in that room training?" Rebecca asked Lena quietly. Zisler's wooden room was totally shrouded by a black, deathly aura. That dense, black, deathly aura made Rebecca and Lena scared to even approach it. Lena wrinkled her nose in a frown, an adorable sight. She said consideringly, "Perhaps powerful experts all have to train very hard like that. However, I still feel more comfortable watching Big Brother Linley train." As she spoke, she turned to look at the distant blue pond, and Rebecca turned to look as well. In the center of the pond, Linley was standing on the water, not sinking at all. Ripple, ripple. The water beneath Linley's feet were a few centimeters lower than the water around him, because Linley was constantly releasing battle chi from his feet, creating small waves in the middle of the pond. Linley was wielding the adamantine heavy sword in his right hand. Occasionally, he would chop with it, while other times, he would just thrust. Every movement would cause the nearby air to tremble. It was as though the air was made of mud, and when the adamantine heavy sword chopped through it, there was a sense that it was breaking through space itself. This profound truths of the earth technique sometimes works, but sometimes doesn't work. Linley's forehead was furrowed. When he had killed Lamson, although Linley had slashed Lamson with his sword, the outside of Lamson's body hadn't been injured on the slightest. His internal organs, however, had all been disintegrated. As Linley viewed it, the 3rd level of using the adamantine heavy sword was the impose level. But the 4th level, was the profound truths of the earth. Through using this heavy weapon, the adamantine heavy sword, Linley was now capable of unleashing the portion of the laws of the earth he had come to understand. This sort of attack could, in the blink of an eye, transform all the attacking power into vibrations which would enter the opponent's body. This sort of vibrational attack, when fully mastered, could all but ignore an opponent's defense. After all, the throbbing pulse of the world was something which had existed since the heavens and the earth had been formed. The secrets it contained within it were extremely deep and profound. The principles of the profound truths of the earth was this: totally convert one's attacking power into the same sort of vibrations as the throbbing pulse of the world itself. When these vibrations entered the opponent's body, the opponent's internals would also begin to resonate. The resonance would be very powerful. After all, it had been created through Linley's attack power. The Bodhi's internal organs weren't nearly as durable as a person's external defenses. This sort of resonance could easily annihilate the opponent's internal organs, shaking them into tiny pieces. However, it is incredibly difficult to transform attack power into resonating vibrations. Linley understood that the battle chi and strength he normally used was a totally different sort of attack, compared to this sort of resonance wave attack. Only by relying on his partial understanding of the laws of the earth was Linley able to convert his normal attacks into this sort of resonance wave attack. Per Linley's line of thought, the more resonance waves were created, the more successful the power transformation had been. Sometimes, I can create over 10 tremors in the blink of an eye, but other times, I can't even create one. Linley's head hurt. Linley understood that once his skill in using the heavy sword had reached this sort of level, he could already be considered as having entered the realm of using the laws of the earth. But Linley wasn't totally able to grasp it. I can't be too greedy. Right now, I shouldn't focus too much on creating as many vibrations as possible. I should focus on just one resonance wave at a time. Wielding the adamantine heavy sword in one hand, Linley's face was very solemn. Suddenly, the adamantine heavy sword seemed to tear the air apart as it chopped down against the lake. The strange thing was, not a single ripple was created on the surface of the lake. But suddenly, the entire lake began to emit a strange gurgling sound, and then, as though it had been lifted by a giant, the entire surface of the lake suddenly rose up, forming a 1-meter-high wall of water. I succeeded again this time. Linley actually wasn't too excited. He sometimes succeeded and sometimes failed when training with this profound truths of the earth. He wasn't able to reproduce the results with any regularity. Big brother Linley, time to eat. Lena stood at the not-too-distant shore, laughing as she called out to him. Grandpa Zisler, time to eat. Stop training. Rebecca began calling out from outside of Zisler's wooden room. With a flip of his hand, Linley sent the adamantine heavy sword flying into the air. When it landed neatly into its sheath. Linley had already totally mastered the impose level, and the weight of the adamantine heavy sword didn't impede Linley in the slightest. On the grass, a rectangular table had been laid out. Linley, Zisler, Rebecca, and Lena were seated around the table. Linley, what are you training on? I saw that bizarre training method you were working on. I've never seen a warrior train in such a manner. Zisler said with curiosity. Zisler had an extremely broad array of knowledge, but comparatively speaking, he didn't know much about warrior training methods. In truth, the most important thing for peak stage experts of the 9th rank to enter the saint level was to advance to a higher level of understanding. And for saint levels to advance to the deity level, they also needed to understand the various laws of heaven and earth before they could attain a divine spark. I am training to gain a greater understanding. It is similar to Omega's attempts to gain insights in the nature of the elemental essences. Linley said casually. Zisler immediately understood. As an archmagus necromancer of the 9th rank, Zisler would often envelop himself with the boundless deathly aura from the undead realm to try and understand the elusive and illusory laws of death. Zisler, we killed Lampson and their men. Do you think the Radiant Church will be able to swallow their rage? Linley was still concerned about this affair. Zisler laughed very confidently. Don't worry. Let me tell you, the O'Brien Empire and the Radiant Church are very far apart. Even if they used flying magical beasts to send messages, they would need 10 days or half a month. And if they were to send experts over, it would still take quite a while. But if saint-level experts were to fly here, they would be able to travel extremely fast. Linley said solemnly. After having killed so many of the Radiant Church's men, it was very possible that the Radiant Church would send over saint-level experts. Haha, don't worry. They don't dare send any saint-level experts. Think about it. Why didn't they send saint-level experts to capture me, and instead send combatants of the 9th rank? Zisler laughed loudly in delight. Linley was curious about this as well. If saint-level experts had been sent after Zisler, capturing him would be very easy. Linley, you must understand, the O'Brien Empire is overseen by the War God. Long ago, the War God decreed that the saint-level combatants of other nations would not be permitted to act wildly within the boundaries of the O'Brien Empire. If they came for the purpose of pleasure, that was fine, but if they were discovered engaging in acts of violence, the repercussions would be very severe. Zisler laughed coldly. Even if the Radiant Church had 10 times the courage, they wouldn't dare go against the War God's edict. The prestige of the War God could not be violated. Not necessarily. Linley shook his head. Didn't you just say it? If they were discovered engaging in acts of violence. But what if they weren't discovered? Remember, the prefectural city of Serre doesn't have any experts, and the War God is far away, in the imperial capital. If a saint-level combatant suddenly appears in the prefectural city of Serre, he wouldn't necessarily know. Zisler was startled. The Radiant Church wouldn't be that insane, right? Zisler was a bit uncertain. Hard to say. After all, we killed 6 of the combatants of the 9th rank in one breath, this time. And when they were trying to capture you, you killed several of them as well. The Radiant Church won't easily take this lying down, without a fight. Linley said solemnly. Zisler considered this for a while, then laughed. It's fine. Although the prefectural city of Serre doesn't have any saint-level combatants, Basel City does have one. Mackenzie. If saint-level experts of the Radiant Church are sent here to fight with us, Mackenzie would definitely notice it. Mackenzie definitely wouldn't permit the forces of the Radiant Church to act in such an unbridled manner on his turf. By then, with 2 saint-level experts engaged in battle here, the War God would definitely find out. True. Linley began to laugh as well. If he was able to incite the Radiant Church into a battle against the O'Brien Empire, the Radiant Church would truly have bitten off more than it could chew. Linley, when I was under armed escort by Lampson and the others in the Northwest Administrative Province, the people whom the Radiant Church secretly placed within the Northwest Administrative Province went to go welcome them. I remember one of them was an old man named Perry, who was responsible for their affairs in the province. Judging from their conversation, that Perry should belong to the provincial capital of Basel. Zisler laughed sinisterly. Since we're going to go to Basel anyways, we might as well dispose of that Perry fellow. Perhaps we might even discover some more secrets of the Radiant Church. The manager for their affairs in the Northwest Administrative Province? Linley's eyes lit up. All right. Well, head out tomorrow. Book 8, The 10,000 Kilometer Journey Chapter 30, The 5-Year Agreement. Keen, the governor of the prefectural city of Serre, was just a 14-year-old child. Although he had his older sister Jen helping him, in truth, how much did Jen know herself? Most of the time, it was still up to their old servant, Lambert, to help out. Lambert's clothes were very sharp and creased. His combed hair was gleaming as he slowly strolled about in the interior of the castle, appearing every inch the noble. Why must the young miss always be thinking about Lord Lay? Lambert was sighing to himself. Jen wanted to go visit Linley, but after Linley had told her that he didn't like being disturbed in the middle of his training, Jen had no choice but to stay in the castle. Unfortunately, it had been a long time since Linley had come to the castle. As he watched Jen slowly grow thinner, Lambert felt very heartsick. Lambert. Hearing his name called, Lambert turned around and saw Linley walking in by himself, dressed in a light blue warrior's outfit. Jen and Keen had issued orders early on that if the castle guards were to see Linley, they were to let him in immediately without need for any notification. Lord Lay. Lambert was extremely happy. Lord Lay, wait in the main hall for just a moment. I will immediately go inform the young master and the young miss. Within the main hall, Linley was quietly sitting on a chair. This trip to the provincial capital of Basel he was going to make with Zisler, Lena, and her sister was most likely one where they would end up staying in the area around Basel. After all, Linley had to be wary of the Radiant Church secretly sending saint-level experts over. As the city of Basel had Mackenzie, the Radiant Church wouldn't dare to act too wildly. Big Brother Lay. A surprised and happy voice rang out from the doorway. Linley turned his head and saw Jen, her face flushed, rush in wearing a faint red dress. Her chest was rising and falling, and she was panting. As soon as she heard the news that Linley was back, Jen had immediately ran over as fast as she could. "Why'd you run so fast? Look at how out of breath you are. Have a seat." Linley laughed. "Okay." Jen very obediently sat down. After a while, Keen and Lambert entered as well. Laughing, Keen complained, "Sis, you ran too fast. I couldn't even keep up with you." Jen was a bit embarrassed. She shot a vicious glare at Keen. "Big Brother Lay, it's been a long time since you last came. How long do you plan to stay this time?" Keen said to Linley. Linley shook his head. "This time, I've come to bid you farewell. I plan to leave the prefectural city of Serre." "What?" Keen and Lambert were both startled. Simultaneously, they turned their heads to look at Jen. Where before, her face had been flushed with excitement and shyness, a stunned look was now on Jen's face. "Big Brother Lay, where are you going?" Jen was the first to ask. "For now, I plan to go to the provincial capital of Basel," Linley replied. The provincial capital of Basel and the prefectural city of Serre were fairly far apart. Normal people would need to spend 2 or 3 days by carriage to get there. "Big Brother Lay, I'll go with you." Jen summoned her courage and said. Linley sighed to himself. How could he not know what Jen was thinking? But towards Jen, Linley felt nothing more than the love he would feel towards a younger sister. This was a familial, platonic love. "Enough, Jen. I'm going on business. I might encounter danger. There's no need for you to follow me." Linley refused. Jen shook her head resolutely. "I'm not afraid." Looking at Jen, Linley knew that if he didn't refuse her very openly and firmly, she wouldn't give up. Linley let out a long sigh. "Jen, all I care about is training. Nothing else. Jen, there's no way I can take care of you." Linley spoke with tact, but how could Jen not understand his meaning? Jen's face was somewhat pale. Since she had been 8 years old, she had lived in that countryside village. The life she had lived there was both peaceful as well as harsh. On this trip to the prefectural city of Serre, Linley had protected them the entire time, which was the only reason her and her brother had survived the trip and took over the governorship. "Big Brother Lay, I don't want to continue repressing my feelings. Big Brother Lay, I know you don't like me that way. I don't want to ask too much. All I want to do is to ask that you allow me to accompany you. Big Brother Lay, I'm willing to be your maidservant. As long as I can be by your side, I'll be happy," Jen said hopefully. Keen and Lambert were both silent. Linley felt extremely anxious as well. Jen really was an extremely kind girl, but... "Jen, there's no need for you to follow me and expose yourself to danger. Right now, you are a noble lady. In the prefectural city of Serre, there are definitely many outstanding young men who are pursuing you," Linley said. Jen bit her lips, then resolutely shook her head. Her eyes were growing moist. "Big Brother Lay," Keen said. "Please agree to my sister's request. These past days when you haven't been around, she's had almost no appetite. She's grown thinner now." Her eyes moist, Jen looked at Linley with an appeal in her eyes. "Jen." In the end, Linley's heart softened. 5 years. I will give you 5 years, and you give me 5 years as well. 5 years from now, I'll come meet you. If at that time you are still resolute in your decision, I'll agree to let you accompany me. Time was the best medicine. 5 years from now, Jen would have matured and her thoughts and beliefs would have changed as well. Linley believed that perhaps because Jen didn't have parents to take care of her when she was young, she had come to depend on and love him. In a few more years, when Jen grew more mature, her mind would change. By then, Linley wouldn't be under any pressure. 5 years. Okay. Hope appeared once more in Jen's eyes. Jen. Linley looked at Jen. Before I go, I need to tell you something. My real name isn't Lay. It is Linley Barrock. Linley Barrock? Jen murmured. Linley? Lord Lay, you are that genius master sculptor? Lambert cried out in surprise. Lambert had previously stayed in the Holy Union. In the Holy Union, Linley was extremely famous. I hope you won't reveal my presence or my whereabouts. Farewell. Linley squeezed out a small smile, then turned and immediately strode out of the hall. As she looked at Linley's departing back, the tears finally began to fall from Jen's eyes. She balled her fists tightly, her nails piercing into her palm's flesh. On the streets of the prefectural city of Serre, Rebecca and Lena were seated on the black-cloud panther, Heru. Bebe was comfortably resting in Lena's arms, while Linley, dressed in his warrior's outfit, was walking alongside Zisler, who was in a long magus robe. They were traveling towards the provincial capital of Basel at high speed. The provincial capital of Basel was a huge city that could be seen from far away. And just like that, Linley's squad drew close to and entered the provincial capital of Basel. No need to rush out and find that Perry right away. Let's find a place to stay first. Linley said. Zisler nodded as well. There were definitely quite a few people named Perry in the provincial capital. Most likely, finding the right one would take some time. Thus, Linley and Zisler went to a hotel and reserved an individual, stand-alone manor, where their party now stayed. 2 days after Linley's party had arrived at the provincial capital of Basel, the Blue Wind Hawks of Count Perry arrived at the Sacred Isle of the Radiant Church. The Sacred Isle was a lonely place, located outside the Yulon continent. The entire Sacred Isle was only a few dozen kilometers long. In truth, in the past, this was a secret base for the Radiant Church. Now, it had been directly converted into their main headquarters. It had a radiant temple that was 9 floors high. This radiant temple wasn't as huge as the radiant temple of Fenley City, but it, too, had been painstakingly constructed by the Radiant Church, costing a great deal of effort. On the 9th floor of the Radiant Temple, Haydn's was seated in front of a window. Through the window, he could see the boundless blue ocean waters beyond the island. Recently, Haydn's had been in fairly good mood. The squad of experts of the 9th rank he had sent out had already successfully captured the Archmagus Necromancer, Zisler. And 2 days ago, he had received another excellent news. In the 18 northern duchies, his forces had made a tremendous discovery: 5 potential vessels of the 8th rank. Generally speaking, an ordinary person would be able to train their bodies to the 6th rank. That was the maximum limit. Some geniuses could reach the 7th rank just by focusing on training their body. Viewed in the 18 northern duchies, the forces of the Radiant Church had discovered 5 siblings, all exceedingly strong and durable. None of them had any battle chi. But all of them had reached the 8th rank as warriors, just based on physical strength. Vessels of the 8th rank. That will definitely be enough to allow seraphims, the 6-winged angels, to display their power. Haydn's couldn't help but be excited. 5 bodies of the 8th rank. When the angels possess them, they will definitely be able to transform into 5 peak stage saint level combatants. Early stage, middle stage, and peak stage saint level combatants were on totally different levels of power. Currently, the entire Radiant Church only had 5 peak stage saint level combatants. But once those 5 specimens of the 8th rank were brought over, the peak stage saint-level experts under the Radiant Church would instantly double. By then, would the cult of shadows still be able to stand against us? Haydn's face was covered in smiles. Your Holiness! Enter. Haydn's face regained its usual calm. A vicar walked in, respectfully presenting a letter to the Holy Emperor. Your Holiness, this is a secret message from our supervisor in the O'Brien Empire's Northwest Administrative Province. Oh? Haydn's raised an eyebrow. The supervisors in the outside areas, aside from their annual reports, would almost never send secret messages. If a secret message was sent out, then it meant that something major has occurred. Could it be that? Haydn suddenly remembered that not too long ago, Lampson and his men had just escorted that archmagus necromancer into the Northwest Administrative Province. Haydn immediately accepted the letter, opening the envelope. As soon as he saw its contents, Haydn's face sank down. Have Lord Stella Chatelet come see me. Lord Stella? The vicar was surprised. In the Radiant Church, the leader of the ascetics was Lord Fallen Leaf. As for the special executors of the ecclesiastical tribunal, their leader was Stella. Lord Stella was only a special executor. But in terms of power, he was on par with the leader of the ecclesiastical tribunal, Praetor Asino. Both were peak stage saint-level combatants. In times of peace, the Radiant Church rarely sent peak stage saint-level combatants out on missions. Hurry! Haydn barked. The vicar immediately came to his senses and hurriedly said, Yes, Your Holiness. Watching the vicar depart, Haydn began to frown. So it seems Lampson's squad had arrived half a month ago in the Northwest Administrative Province. But there has been no news from our borders informing me of their return to the Holy Union. It seems they really have been killed. Lampson and 10 other experts of the 9th rank had all died. This setback was not a small one, but Haydn was able to maintain his calm. After all, what the Radiant Church truly relied on was saint-level combatants. As long as their saint-level combatants remained, the Radiant Church wouldn't be threatened at its core. Lampson and the other 5 were escorting Zisler. Given their ability, 1 or 2 combatants of the 9th rank wouldn't be able to deal with them. Haydn frowned. Could it have been a saint-level combatant? The Mackenzie of the Northwest Administrative Province? Haydn couldn't think of any other possibilities besides Mackenzie. Mackenzie. Haydn was filled with a murderous intent. To Haydn, those 11 combatants of the 9th rank put together weren't as valuable as a single Zisler. Zisler's true value lay not in the man himself, but rather in the training method for necromantic magic. As a type of magic on par with oracular magic, it was naturally extremely powerful. It included maledictive spells, poison gases, plague spells, undead slaves, and the Wraith Call ability. These were all extremely powerful. The Radiant Church didn't reject necromancers from their ranks. So long as a necromancer was willing to serve them, they would totally be willing to give this necromancer the title of special executor. The dark underbelly of the Radiant Church that was the ecclesiastical tribunal possessed experts of all types and places. Haydn didn't know that the person who had killed Lampson and his men was Linley. If he had known, Haydn would probably be so angry that he would jump up and down. Your Holiness! An ice-cold voice rang out. Stella! Come in! Haydn said warmly. Stella was only 1.7 meters tall. In the Yulon continent, he would be considered a fairly small and skinny person. He had short white hair, and his eyes were as sharp as knife blades. Judging from his appearance, he seemed to be a middle-aged man. Your Holiness, is there something you need? Stella asked directly. Haydn was very direct as well. According to our reports, Lampson and his men are most likely all dead. There is a high chance that the killer is a saint-level combatant of the O'Brien Empire. Stella remained silent. I am going to send you to the North Sea Administrative Province of the O'Brien Empire. When you get there, you will meet with another group which is escorting a number of prisoners. No matter what happens, you must ensure that those 5 siblings are brought back to the Sacred Isle. And if I encounter saint-level combatants of the O'Brien Empire? Stella asked. Kill them, and then fly back with those 5 at maximum speed. Haydn said emotionlessly. Once they used those 5 bodies of the 8th rank as vessels for angels to descend into, the Radiant Church would have produced 5 peak stage saint-level combatants. For the sake of that, it would be worth it if they had to offend the O'Brien Empire. After all, even if they offended the O'Brien Empire, at worst the Holy Empire would just have to give the O'Brien Empire some sort of compensation. All right. I immediately will head out tonight, at nightfall. Stella said indifferently. Book 8, The 10,000 Kilometer Journey Chapter 31, Concealed by the Night. There had been no trace of Linley in over 3 years. It was impossible for Haydns to connect this affair with Linley. What's more, even if he did think of Linley, he wouldn't think that Linley had the ability to kill 6 experts of the 9th rank. Unfortunately, Haydns didn't know that Linley had grown at a speed even faster than he had feared. Within a secluded restaurant in the provincial capital of Basel, Linley was seated by himself, with Bebe being his only companion. They occasionally were drinking. Come over here. Linley called to the waiter. Is there something you need, sir? That waiter was extremely courteous. Linley casually tossed out 3 gold pieces. Let me ask you a question. If I'm satisfied with your answer, these 3 gold pieces are yours. This waiter's yearly salary was only around 4 gold pieces. His eyes immediately lit up with greed. Sir, please ask. I know quite a few things in this province. The servant said confidently. In a place like this restaurant, all sorts of people would come and visit. The servant would overhear a great deal and know a great deal as well. I want to ask you, is there an old man named Perry within this city of Basel? His hair is white, and he should appear rather dignified. Linley whispered into the waiter's ears. The waiter immediately let out a confident laugh, and then, very conscientiously, lowered his voice in response. You must be referring to Count Perry. Count Perry? Linley's eyes lit up. The waiter nodded. In the provincial capital of Basel, there's only one noble named Perry who is fairly well known. And this Perry is, indeed, an old man, so old that his hair is white. There's no mistaking it. Oh. Linley nodded. Do you know where Count Perry's manor is? The servant nodded. Of course. Count Perry lives on Huading Road, the 3rd residence from the right. If you come with me, I'll add another 3 gold coins. Linley said. After all, Linley was worried that he might get lost by himself. It was better to bring the servant with him. This way, at least he wouldn't get totally lost. Watching Linley bring out another 3 gold coins, the servant immediately grew excited. All right. Sir, please wait a bit. I'll go talk to the boss first. If he didn't do anything that day, at worst he would be deducted a day's pay. But by following Linley, he would be paid 3 gold coins. The provincial capital of Basel. Huading Road. Linley stared from afar an ancient-looking manor. Judging from the decaying, ivy-wrapped walls, this manor was at least several centuries old. Count Perry, a very kind fellow? Linley sneered. This very kind fellow the waiter described was the supervisor of affairs for the Radiant Church in the Northwest Administrative Province. The O'Brien Empire was extremely antagonistic towards foreign religions. If Perry were to be discovered, he would definitely be found guilty of a serious crime, to be punished by having his belongings confiscated and his clan wiped out. Memorizing the address, Linley immediately turned and left. But what Linley didn't notice was a man staring at him in astonishment from a distance. Here? He actually showed up here? The man was amazed. It's been 3 years. I didn't expect to discover him here. It looks like I'll receive that reward of 5,000 gold coins. The man was very delighted. Walking on the streets, Linley did not notice any of the ordinary commoners who weren't particularly strong. Naturally, he wouldn't have paid any attention to this ordinary warrior who was only of the third rank. Within the courtyard of the residence behind his hotel, Zisler was seated beneath a large tree in the courtyard. Seeing Linley enter, he laughed. "How did it go? Did you find that Perry fellow?" "Found him. He's even a count. His position isn't that low," Linley said. "Someone capable of becoming the supervisor of affairs for a province definitely wasn't an incapable person. He would either be a wealthy magnate or a powerful noble." "Haha, wonderful. Then tonight, let us pay a visit." Zisler's laughed sinisterly, his eyes emitting a hint of green light. Linley nodded calmly. "Rebecca, Lena." Linley raised his head to look at the two twins who had just walked in from the main hall. "Tonight, the two of you need to stay here. Don't go anywhere." "Understood." Rebecca and Lena both nodded. Zisler laughed in the direction of the twins. "Do as I have taught you, and enter the meditative trance. In a few days, I will begin to commence the necromantic initiation rites for both of you." After having been with them for a period of time, Zisler had made the determination that these two twins were highly suited for studying necromantic magic. In truth, the normal 7 elements of magic, earth, fire, water, wind, lightning, light, darkness, all had fairly high requirements with regards to spiritual energy. But the higher level arts of oracular magic, life magic, and necromantic magic, had terrifyingly high requirements when it came to souls. Of these 3 types of magic, necromantic magic had the highest requirements with regards to spiritual purity and soul analysis. Comparatively speaking, it didn't have much of a requirement with regards to elemental essence affinity. Necromantic initiation rites? Rebecca and Lena were both excited. This entire time, they had hoped they would be able to seek revenge for their parents, but they didn't have any power. But after learning necromantic magic, they would have sufficient power. That night, "Haru, protect Rebecca and Lena," Linley instructed. To deal with a minor figure like Perry was an extremely simple task. Linley and Zisler would be more than enough. With Bebe present as well, there would be no chance of failure at all. "Be careful," Rebecca and Lena said. Zisler laughed weirdly. "In Basel, aside from Mackenzie, there's no one whom I or Linley need to be concerned with. Let's go," Linley said calmly. Both dressed in black, Linley and Zisler very quickly slipped out of the courtyard. The black-furred Bebe also stealthily followed the two, with none the wiser. In the dark night, Linley, Zisler, and Bebe were walking in an alleyway. Huading Road must be ahead. Linley's memory was very good. Despite having a very complicated layout, Linley was able to totally memorize the layout after having walked through the city once. Linley, Zisler, and Bebe directly passed through the small alleyway and arrived at the outskirts of the walls to Count Perry's manor. Staring at this ancient building, Zisler and Linley exchanged glances. "Zisler, you need to be certain." Linley had never seen Count Perry before. "Don't worry." Zisler's lips curled in a dark smile. Linley led Zisler forward as they jumped directly past the wall. With regards to how residences were generally laid out, Linley and Zisler both had a good general idea. Usually in front was the main hall, while the second building in the back was where the owner would sleep. But Zisler came to a stop in front of the second building as he began to mumble a magical incantation. A short while later, a grey smoke began to slowly drift towards the building. In a short while, the entire second building was covered by that grey fog. The fog continued to spread until it covered every single building in the residence. Watching this happen, Linley was puzzled. Linley took a sniff of the grey fog. As he did, he felt momentarily dizzy, but then instantly recovered. "What are you doing?" Linley said softly. "I'm just putting the weaker people here to sleep. Upon reaching the 7th rank, a person can use battle chi to counteract this fog. Perry is a warrior of the 8th rank. Zisler knew exactly how strong Perry was. "Who is it?" An angry roar could be heard, as an old man and 3 middle-aged men ran out from the room. The leader stared icily at Linley and Zisler. But because of the grey mist, as well as the fact that it was late at night, they could not make out Linley or Zisler's appearance. "Lord Count!" 3 more voices rang out from the courtyard, as 2 more middle-aged men and a young man ran over. The Count had 7 experts at his residence, 5 of the 7th rank, 2 of the 8th rank. "Who are you?" Count Perry barked. "Ha ha ha! Oh, Perry! You've forgotten me?" Zisler slowly walked forward, while 2 powerful, golden-furred zombies materialized out of nowhere. The mist began to thin, and Count Perry could now see him clearly. "It's you!" Count Perry's eyes bulged from their sockets. He knew exactly how powerful Zisler was. Even 5 or 6 experts of the 9th rank wouldn't be able to do anything to him. Seeing Zisler appear, Perry understood that most likely, Lampson and his men had indeed met a violent end. "And you are?" Count Perry looked at Linley. Suddenly, he started. Linley's appearance had long ago been distributed to every single one of the Radiant Chich's supervisors in foreign locations. Compared to 3 years ago, Linley's hair was now a bit longer, yes, but his face hadn't changed much. "You are Linley?" Perry was somewhat shocked. Linley smiled and nodded. "Count Perry, good eyesight. Zisler and I have quite a few things we'd like to discuss with you on this lovely night." "Zisler, let's move." "Kill!" Zisler immediately barked. The 2 golden-furred zombies suddenly transformed into rays of golden light, charging at those other 6 men. Sudden screams of agony could be heard, as the zombies killed 3 of them in a blink of an eye, causing the other 3 to turn pale with fear. Clang! That young man chopped down with his saber on the body of the golden-furred zombie, but the only effect was that his hand broke from the impact. Golden-furred zombies prided themselves on their defensive abilities. Gruol! With a low growl, the golden-furred zombie caved the young man's head in with a single blow. Bang! A middle-aged man kicked viciously at a nearby boulder, sending enormous pieces of rock smashing towards the golden-furred zombie. But the zombie only charged at him, fast as lightning. Those pieces of rocks continued to fly at high speed at the zombie. Bang! 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 One rock after another smashed against the golden-furred zombie, and it didn't block at all. Each rock contained thousands of pounds of force, but unfortunately, they did nothing to the golden-furred zombies. Slash! A black blur flashed by, and that middle-aged man fell to the floor in astonishment. "You're too slow, you big oaf!" Bebe growled towards the golden-furred zombie, then jumped back onto Linley's shoulders. The golden-furred zombie's speed could be considered the speed of a normal combatant of the 9th rank. But compared to Bebe, there was a huge difference. After all, Bebe and Hera were magical beasts of the 9th rank which specialized in speed. The 6 of them had been killed by the 2 golden-furred zombies and Bebe in the blink of an eye. Those zombies were, after all, undead of the 9th rank. Those people didn't have a chance against them. Perry had silently maintained his composure the entire time. When he had been selected as the supervisor for this region by the Radiant Church, he had mentally prepared for such a day. Only, what he had expected was that he would be killed by the O'Brien Empire's men. He didn't expect that it would be Linley and Zisler who killed him. "Linley, it was you who killed Lampson's men and rescued Zisler?" Perry questioned. Before dying, Perry wanted to indulge his curiosity. "Indeed," Linley replied succinctly. Perry nodded and laughed. "You truly do live up to the name of being one of the descendants of the Dragon Blood Warrior clan. In 3 years, your power has grown so much. I hope you don't expect to get anything out of me, however. I won't answer your questions." A hint of a holy light had appeared on Perry's face. "Do you think that will do you any good?" Zisler sneered. "Seize him!" Zisler ordered coldly. The two golden-furred zombies charged at Perry at high speed, seizing him without giving him a chance to avoid. Linley, help me stay on watch for a while. I am about to soul scour him. Zisler instructed Linley. Linley started. Soul scour? Linley had never heard of anyone being able to soul scour someone. Even the Radiant Church didn't have the ability to search and scour a person's soul. But necromancers, as practitioners of the type of magic that involved souls the most, naturally knew far more about souls than all other types of magi. Soul scour? Hearing this word, Perry was shocked as well. Impossible. He had never heard of a soul scour technique. Haha. Even if you were to die right now, it would be too late. Zisler walked in front of Perry. The 5 fingers of his wizened, chicken claw-like hand grabbed Perry's head, while at the same time, Zisler's eyes suddenly turned a deep green color. Ah! Perry's body began to tremble violently, while at the same time, he began to let out agonized moans. Book 8, The 10,000 Kilometer Journey Chapter 32, The Decision. Although Perry was already over 200 years old, as a warrior of the 8th rank, his body was still very sturdy. But after Zisler pierced his claws into his skull, Perry's face and body began to turn ashen white, while at the same time, his body began to quiver violently, as though he were an extremely ill old man. Linley carefully watched this sight. Soul scour. This was the first time Linley had seen this sort of technique performed. As one of the 3 most powerful types of magi, necromancers did indeed have some terrifying abilities. After approximately 2 minutes had passed, Zisler's green, glowing eyes returned to their normal color. Zisler glanced at the ashen-faced Perry, letting out a sinister laugh, then released him. The 2 golden-furred zombies also released Perry. As for Perry, with his skull pierced by claws and his soul scoured, he was dead without a doubt. Like a pile of mud, he slumped to the floor and didn't move again. What do you think? Zisler looked delightedly at Linley. An expert like Zisler generally wouldn't feel pride upon seeing the astonishment and admiration of ordinary people. But during this period of time that he had spent with Linley, he had yet to do anything to make Linley truly admire him. After revealing this ability, Zisler was quite looking forward to seeing Linley's amazed expression. Only the amazement of experts could satisfy Zisler's vanity. Very incredible. Linley sighed in honest amazement. Souls were very amazing, mysterious things. They were the most fundamental component of a person, but people knew very little about souls. To recover a person's memory from his soul was something which Linley, at least, couldn't even begin to imagine doing. Ha ha ha! Zisler laughed delightedly, and then those 2 golden-furred zombies by his side disappeared, returning to their home in the undead realm. Let's go! Linley urged. In the blink of an eye, Count Perry's manner returned to its normal calm. By now, most people here remained unconscious, while the corpses of the experts just lay there on the floor. Within the private courtyard of their residence. Shutting the door to the main hall, Rebecca and Lena very obediently lit the lamps as Linley and Zisler began to chat. What did you discover in Perry's memories? Linley said calmly. Zisler laughed delightedly as he looked at Linley. Linley, in the past, I knew too little about you. I didn't expect that you were such an incredible figure. What did you find out about Big Brother Lay? Rebecca's adorable, large eyes widened as she asked with curiosity. Zisler laughed, his white eyebrows jumping up and down. Rebecca, Lena, your big brother Linley has quite a reputation in the Holy Union. His proficiency in stone sculpture is nearly on the same level as the likes of grandmasters such as perilous. Do you know? When he was 16 years old, he carved out a special sculpture. Can you guess how much that sculpture was worth? Zisler asked, laughing. Sculpture? Rebecca and Lena glanced at each other. To them, sculptures were things that were very hard to make. To carve out a sculpture that was accurate and detailed was already hard enough, to say nothing of making it have a special aura. How many gold coins? Rebecca and Lena asked curiously. 10 million gold coins, Zisler announced. Zisler had actually gotten all of this information from Count Perry's mind. Count Perry had received a kill order from the Radiant Church regarding Linley. Naturally, this kill order had many details regarding Linley. 10 million gold coins, for just a statue? Rebecca and Lena's mouths hung open, very wide. Not just sculptures, by the way. Your big brother Linley's talent as a magus, in the past, was the second best in history. But now, most likely in the entire history of the Yulon continent, he can be considered the number one genius. As for his talent as a warrior, you should already know. Zisler sincerely admired Linley from the heart. Genius. Nobody would question that he was a genius. Linley's performance had given testament to everything. Rebecca and Lena immediately looked towards Linley, their eyes filled with astonishment and worship. Enough, Zisler. Linley shook his head and laughed. Enough of these bygone affairs. Tell me what you found in Perry's mind. Zisler nodded, dropping his smile. Based on the information in Perry's memory, the Radiant Church's forces in the O'Brien Empire are fairly weak. They are all in hiding. They don't dare to offend the war god, and thus in the O'Brien Empire, the Radiant Church has very few experts. Linley nodded slightly. From Perry's memories, I discovered the identities of the various supervisors throughout the Northwest Administrative Province for the Radiant Church. We now can definitely shatter their entire web of power in this area. Zisler laughed evilly. Creation was hard. Destruction was easy. To place a group of people in an area without arousing suspicion was extremely hard. But to destroy this web of influence only required those people be killed. And in the other provinces? Linley asked. As far as Linley was concerned, just destroying their web of influence in this administrative province wasn't enough. Only by destroying the entire operation of the Radiant Church in the O'Brien Empire would Linley be truly happy. If we kill all of the general supervisors and some of the important supervisors in all 7 provinces, the Radiant Church's forces will be like a beheaded dragon. In addition, the Radiant Church's force structure in these areas all hinge around a single line of communication. Once the general supervisor and supervisors are dead, most likely their entire web of influence will collapse. The greater the blow to the Radiant Church, the happier Linley would be. Zisler shook his head. Just like how each supervisor in each prefectural city only reports to Perry, Perry himself only reports to the general supervisor for the entire O'Brien Empire, or the Radiant Church's headquarters. The general supervisor for the entire O'Brien Empire? Linley's eyes lit up. So in the O'Brien Empire, there was a highly ranked general supervisor for the Empire? If they could seize this person and soul scour him, most likely they would learn even more. Sadly, even Perry didn't know who this person really is. Zisler shook his head. Perry only knew about a place he could go to exchange messages. Linley nodded. But Zisler suddenly began to laugh. But from Perry's memories, I discovered another piece of interesting news. Speak. Linley looked at Zisler. The general supervisor of the O'Brien Empire issued an order. In roughly another month's time, another squad of prisoner escorts will enter the Northwest Administrative Province. The general supervisor ordered Perry to carefully assist and welcome these people and make sure their secrets were kept. Zisler's lips split into a grin. Per this order, it seems as though they place a very high importance on this squad. This squad isn't the slightest bit less important than the one escorting me. Oh? Linley's eyes lit up. For this squad's importance to be so high meant that the people they were escorting definitely weren't ordinary figures. Do you know where their first point of entry in the Northwest Administrative Province will be? Linley asked. It should be the prefectural city of Deek. Based on the initial planned trajectory, they won't pass through the provincial capital. Zisler said. Linley nodded. He could totally understand this. The provincial capital of Basel had the Saint-level expert Mackenzie present. Naturally, their route had to avoid this place. The prefectural city of Dako is roughly 800 kilometers away. Zisler was quite familiar with the geography of the O'Brien Empire. Linley said coldly. 800 kilometers? If we rush, we can get there in a day. If the Black Cloud Panther, Heru, were to run at maximum speed, he wouldn't even need half a day. But running for so long meant that he wouldn't be able to maintain maximum output the entire time. But if they ran at normal speeds and left in the morning, they definitely could reach there by nightfall. In half a month, we will head towards the prefectural city of Dako. Linley said. Zisler nodded as well. Time passed. Linley, Zisler, and the sisters remained within this residence. Zisler was preparing to begin the necromantic initiation rites for the two sisters, while Linley didn't waste any time either as he trained continuously. Linley didn't actually have the opportunity to witness the necromantic initiation rites firsthand. Only Rebecca, Lena, and Zisler were inside their room, as they began the necromantic initiation rites. Very shortly afterwards, Zisler left the room, then instructed Linley not to disturb the two. A full 3 days and 3 nights later, Rebecca and Lena proudly left the room. Over the course of those 3 days, they had been totally attuned with the contents of the necromantic initiation rites. According to what Zisler said, these two sisters had very high aptitudes. As for Linley, he continued to train in the 4th level of the heavy sword, the profound truths of the earth. In the desolate wildness, a long-robed figure crossed the boundless plains like a whirlwind, flying east at high speed. He had a skinny, agile frame, and his short hair was gleaming silver, looking like steel threads. His entire body was covered by a black robe, and his eyes were very sharp. He stared east as he flew through the air at high speed. 5 vessels of the 8th rank. Stella still remembered Haydn's repeated instructions. Those 5 siblings which were under armed escort could not be allowed to escape, no matter what. 5 bodies of the 8th rank. Once the angels descended, they would transform into 5 peak stage saint-level combatants. It has been a long time since I've killed a saint-level combatant. Stella's face had a hint of a cold, sinister smile on it. Haydn's had already stated that if a saint-level combatant were to interfere, he could kill them. The Radiant Church would bear all responsibility for his actions. The 10th morning after Count Perry's death. Linley was seated cross-legged on the floor, not moving at all. The morning mist covered the lands. Recently, Linley's life had been very peaceful, even though Perry's death had aroused an investigation by the city guards. But this had nothing to do with Linley and his group. Linley suddenly rose to his feet. The adamantine heavy sword in his hands suddenly stabbed forward, and an ear-splitting howl could be heard. A wall roughly 50 meters in front of Linley suddenly quivered, a layer of dust shaking off from it. Boom! A fist-sized chunk of wall suddenly turned into dust. The sand-like pieces of disintegrated stone slowly poured out, revealing that fist-sized hole in the wall. No battle chi had been shot out. Just by stabbing at the air, Linley had created a hole in the wall at 50 meters distance. Profound truths of the earth triple-layered waves. Linley gently murmured, these most basic triple-layered waves of the profound truths of the earth have finally been completed. After leaving the prefectural city of Serre, Linley had been pondering this the entire time. And now, Linley had finally mastered the most basic attack of the profound truths of the earth, the triple-layered waves. When the force of the battle chi and physical strength in an attack was converted into vibrational form, the more vibrations that were created represented a higher rate of conversion, with lower loss of power. The triple-layered waves technique had a very high level of loss conversion, but it was already extremely powerful. After all, it was a totally different form of attack than one utilizing battle chi and physical force. Linley. Zisler was standing at the doorway, watching. What sort of attack is that? Zisler was quite surprised as well. Zisler had seen attacks from saint-level combatants. But generally, what they did was chop out their swords, projecting battle chi in distant attacks. But Zisler had never seen someone like Linley, who without visibly using battle chi or any other power, could suddenly, silently, create a fist-sized hole in a distant wall. This was too bizarre. Even if I told you, you wouldn't understand. Linley laughed calmly. After having mastered the most basic triple-layered waves, Linley knew that the farther up he went, the more difficult it would be and the more time would be required. Knock. 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 Suddenly, knocking sounds could be heard from outside the door. Linley immediately walked over and opened it. The hotel attendant said respectfully, "Sir, this gentleman wants to meet you." An amiable, middle-aged man was standing next to the attendant. The middle-aged man glanced at the attendant, and the attendant very courteously withdrew immediately. The middle-aged man smiled at Linley. "Lord Linley, hello." Linley's face couldn't help but change. There were very few people who knew his identity. "Lord Linley, no need to be too anxious. My clan's lord wishes to meet with you." The middle-aged man smiled. "Who is the lord of your clan?" Linley frowned. "Lord Linley, if you read this letter, you will understand." The middle-aged man withdrew a letter from his clothes and offered it to Linley. Book 8, The 10,000 Kilometer Journey Chapter 33, The Four Brothers' Paths. Zisler walked out from the back as well. Hearing the middle-aged man address Linley by his name, he immediately grew wary. But after he reached Linley's side, he saw that upon reading the letter, a smile appeared on Linley's face. A very happy smile. Zisler could tell that although Linley wasn't a sinister fellow, he was rather callous, focused utterly on training. He had never seen Linley smile in such a happy, brilliant manner. "Zisler." Linley laughed. "You stay here for now. I need to meet a friend." "Sure." Zisler nodded. "Bebe." Linley shouted towards Bebe, who was sleeping on the ground. Bebe opened his bleary eyes, staring questioningly at Linley. "Come, make a trip with me." "Haru, you can stay here." Bebe delightedly raised his head up at Haru arrogantly, then scampered onto Linley's shoulders. Happily, he mentally spoke to Linley. "Boss, what are we going to do?" "You'll know when we get there." Linley laughed. "Lead the way," Linley said to the middle-aged man. Within 15 minutes, Linley and the middle-aged man reached a lavish, large mansion. From far away, Linley could recognize the figure standing in the middle of the main hall. "Third bro." That familiar voice called out excitedly. "Boss Yale." Linley was laughing as well. "Squeak." Bebe squeaked out delightedly as well. When they were at the Ernst Institute, Bebe had gotten along very well with Yale, Reynolds, and George as well. Naturally, they were quite familiar with each other. Yale had matured quite a bit compared to 3 years ago. Right now, Yale was roughly as tall as Linley, nearly 2 meters tall. But Yale was slightly thinner than Linley, making him appear like a tall, skinny man. That form-fitting black gentleman's suit, combined with a faint cologne, made Yale seem to have a very magnetic charisma. "Third bro, I've been worried to death over these past 3 years." Yale bear-hugged Linley. Hugging his dear friend, Linley felt very happy as well. In the past 3 years, he hadn't seen his dear friends a single time. "I didn't expect that you would grow to be about as tall as me. These 3 years really have changed you." Yale sighed. Compared to 3 years ago, Yale didn't change that much, but Linley had. Linley laughed loudly. "You were a year older than me to begin with. You just had a head start. Now that you are no longer growing, it's very normal that I caught up." Bebe squeaked off from the side. Bebe was very happy as well. It had been a long time since Bebe had seen Linley laughing and joking like this. "Wow, Bebe." Yale hugged Bebe, affectionately rubbing his little head. "I knew that you'd come. I've prepared some fine foods for you." Yale turned his head and glanced at the attendant, who understood what Yale desired. Very shortly afterwards, over 10 attendants pushed food carts laden with food over. This is roasted meat delicacies from around the world. Bei, have a taste. Yale laughed loudly. Bei's little nose sniffed the air, then his eyes immediately began to shine. Transforming into a black shadow, he charged towards those food carts. Watching this, Linley and Yale both began to laugh. "Boss Yale, let's chat inside," Linley said with a laugh. The two brothers entered the main hall, which had been covered with all sorts of delicacies and fine wines. The two brothers began to eat and chat. "Right, Yale, what happened to the Ernst Institute?" Linley suddenly asked. "It's finished." Yale shook his head and sighed. The Ernst Institute was very close to Fenley City and came under heavy attack by the magical beasts. You know, even the instructors in the institute were only of the 8th rank at most. Most of the students were very weak. Facing all those magical beast show, could they resist them? Linley nodded. Students of the 6th year, the highest year, were just magi of the 6th rank. But the magical beasts possessed quite a few beasts of the 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th ranks. When a large number of magical beasts charged over, it really was a disaster. There is no longer an Ernst Institute in the world. Yale sighed. I, Reynolds, and George left the Holy Union 3 years ago. These 3 years, I've been running around between the O'Brien Empire and the Yulon Empire. As for Reynolds, naturally he returned to his clan, while George returned to the Yulon Empire as well. I hear that George has done quite well for himself. He's managed to enter the imperial government of the Yulon Empire. Entered the imperial government? Linley wasn't too shocked. George was, after all, a very good person at organization, and behind George was the mighty Walsh clan. Success wouldn't be too hard for him. And 4th bro? Linley laughed as he asked. 4th bro? He returned to his own clan and was delivered to the army by his father. Yale laughed loudly. 3rd bro, just imagine. 4th bro in the army. Isn't that unbelievable? Linley began to laugh as well. Their 4th bro, Reynolds, was a very lively and rebellious person. But now, he was entering the army? One could imagine how miserable he was there. But last year, when I saw 4th bro, he seemed to have changed quite a bit. He's much more mature than before, and he does indeed look like a soldier now. But as soon as he started to drink with me, he returned to his old self. Yale roared with laughter. Boss Yale, what about yourself? I feel that compared to before, you have even more of a nobleman's aura than in the past. Indeed. Dressed in that black gentleman's suit, Yale's nobleman's aura could be clearly sensed by anyone. Nothing for it. Yale laughed bitterly. After leaving the Ernst Institute, aside from normal magical training, I've been focused on managing some of my clan's affairs. Naturally, I had to sit through countless noble banquets. After so long, I've learned some of their mannerisms. Linley nodded. His 3 dear brothers had all embarked on path which belonged to them. Government. Military. Market. And what about myself? In his mind, Linley knew exactly what his path was. Advance on the path of training until I reach the level of the High Priest, the War God, Endolin. Stand at the very peak of the Yulon continent. The absolute peak level experts possessed all the true power in this world. To a deity level combatant, everything was but a joke. No one dared to offend a deity level combatant. They were the ultimate forces in existence in the Yulon continent. Linley wouldn't permit any obstacles to prevent him from advancing on this path. Nothing would stop him. 3rd bro, 3 years ago, when I went to the imperial capital, I saw your little brother. Yale suddenly said. Warden? Linley's eyes lit up. Yale nodded with a laugh. When I saw Warden, he was very worried about you, since he didn't know what your situation was. I told him you were fine, and that you were just training by yourself. How is Warden doing? Linley asked. Don't worry, he's doing very well. Yale said with surprise, I didn't expect that your little brother was even more muscular than you. 3 years ago, he was already a bit taller than me. By now, he should be even taller. Those arms, those muscles. Damn. Linley laughed while nodding. Warden's growth was totally within his expectations. After all, every single dragon blood warrior in the history of his clan was extremely physically muscular. The weapons they used were the likes of the first dragon blood warrior's warblade slaughterer, the second one's heavy pike, or the third one's heavy warhammer. Linley, your little brother, Warden, really knows how to conceal himself. In the past, he had been hiding his power the entire time. But after knowing about your affairs, your little brother stopped doing so and began to slowly reveal his strength. A while ago, at the annual tournament for the 7th grade students, he shocked everyone when he defeated a warrior of the 8th rank. Yale sighed in amazement. Linley smiled calmly. A warrior of the 8th rank? Right now, Warden was of the 7th rank, and he could also dragon form. Once dragon formed, he could reach the 9th rank in power. After becoming famous, how has Warden been doing? Linley asked. Warden was conferred the rank of Imperial Count. Right now, he's a rising star in the O'Brien Empire. In a few years, perhaps he will be recruited into the War Gods College. Yale sighed. In the future, he has a high chance of entering the Saint level. War Gods College? Saint level? Linley didn't actually wish for his younger brother to enter the War Gods College. To the venerable dragon blood warriors, entering the Saint level was something which would happen without fail. Linley chatted with Yale for an entire morning. Linley was now totally at ease, knowing that all of his brothers were living good lives. After lunch. Third bro. This is a talisman of the Dawson conglomerate. It represents your status as an elder. Take it. Yale withdrew a black talisman. Linley was a bit shocked. An elder? When Linley was at the city of Fenley, he had already displayed the power of an early-stage warrior of the 9th rank. At that time, Linley was only 17. Given his natural ability as a magus, and as well as the fact that he could transform into a dragon blood warrior, the elders of the Dawson conglomerate had come to the conclusion that he would sooner or later enter the Saint level. Since that was the case, allowing Linley to become an elder of the Dawson conglomerate was definitely a worthy investment. Just take it, on account of us being brothers. Yale laughed. Linley glanced at Yale. He understood that by accepting this talisman, it signified that if in the future, the Dawson conglomerate ran into any difficulties, he would have to help out. After all, this talisman represented both power and responsibilities. All right. I'll accept it. Laughing, Linley took the talisman. Even if he didn't have this talisman, if the Dawson conglomerate really ran into any difficulties, for the sake of his dear bro Yale, Linley of course couldn't just stand by and watch. Thanks. The two brothers were very close. Thus, there were many words that did not need to be said. Third bro. I feel as though your aura, compared to 3 years ago, is much more restrained. Over the course of these 3 years, what level of power have you reached? Yale lowered his voice and whispered the question with curiosity. Linley didn't hide the truth. Beneath the Saint level, I should be invincible. Yale stared with slight amazement at Linley. Enough for now, I have to get back. I'll come visit you in a few days. Linley laughed. The North Sea Administrative Province. Within an ordinary little city. Within a quiet, secluded courtyard. Lord Stella. A powerfully built warrior called out softly from outside a door. It's time for us to move. A moment later, with a creak, the door swung open. Stella swept the man with his cold stare. Then let's move. Yes. The man didn't even dare to breathe loudly. Stella left the courtyard. Only then did the people nearby let out relieved sighs. A glance from a peak stage Saint level combatant was enough to make a man's heart quail. quickly." The man immediately urged. The other men, escorting those 5 hugely brawny warriors, began to move as well. Those 5 huge warriors were 2.2 meters tall, and astonishingly muscular. Only, they were tightly bound by a dark golden rope. No matter how powerful they were, they couldn't break free from these bounds. Their mouths had been sealed as well. Mumble, mumble. The 5 siblings angrily tried to curse. "Do you want to die?" One of the black-robed guards landed a vicious whip blow on the body of one of the 5 siblings, but only left behind a faint white mark. FCK, their bodies are incredibly durable. While Stella's group was busy traversing one city after another in the North Sea Administrative Province, Linley was entrusting Rebecca and Lena into the care of the Dawson conglomerate's forces in Basel. And then, Linley, Bebe, and Harris set out in the direction of the prefectural city of Dako. This troop escorting these prisoners only have 2 warriors of the 9th rank. "This will be easy." Traveling on Harris' back, Zisler laughed. "I wonder who this squad is escorting." Zisler, the news of Perry's death should have reached the general supervisor of the Chich's affairs in the O'Brien Empire by now, right? Linley suddenly said. "Yes, he should know by now," Zisler said. "However, they definitely wouldn't be aware that I can soul scour." Book 8, The 10,000 Kilometer Journey Chapter 34, In Dire Straits. The prefectural city of Dako was a medium-sized city which held a population of 300,000. As one of the cities located at the border between the Northwest Administrative Province and the North Sea Administrative Province, each day there were quite a number of people entering and leaving the city. We arrived. Seeing the city off in the distance, Linley came to a halt. This jog, traversing 800 kilometers in 6 hours, didn't tire Linley in the slightest. Actually, it was far, far below Linley's maximum speed. Likewise, for Haru, the black-cloud panther, it was also quite an easy journey. We arrived. The sun hasn't even set yet. Zisler turned his head to look at the sun, still high in the western sky, and let out a sigh. In Perry's memory, he held the exact location of the arrival, because Perry was planning to personally go to the prefectural city of Dako to welcome the party. Linley and Zisler took up residence in a manor not too far away from the meeting place. Having money made so many things easier. Afterwards, Linley and Zisler began to quietly train, awaiting the arrival of the escort squad, who were going to fall into their trap. After 10 or so days, after having traveled nearly 2,000 kilometers on the roads of the North Sea Administrative Province, Stella's men finally arrived at the borders of the North Sea Administrative Province. "Giddy up, giddy up." A man whipped his horse, urging it to go next to Stella. He said respectfully, "My lord, we've received word that the supervisor for the Northwest Administrative Province, Count Perry, has been killed. Should we continue on our previously scheduled route?" Stella, mounted on horseback, was quiet for a moment, then said calmly, "Count Perry's faith and loyalty to the Lord is without question. He definitely wouldn't have betrayed the Lord. Continue on our original route." "Yes, my lord." The knight next to him acknowledged respectfully. The knight actually wasn't concerned either. First of all, Count Perry was indeed an extremely ardent adherent to the faith of the Radiant Church. He definitely wouldn't turn traitor. And secondly, even if they did manage to torture information out of Perry, they would at most ask about some secrets regarding the Radiant Church. They definitely wouldn't think to ask about the plans of this squad. In addition, this squad was under the escort of Stella. What did they have to be afraid of? By nightfall, Stella's squad finally reached the prefectural city of Dako. Long before Perry had died, the Radiant Chich's forces in Dako had already received their orders. They had been waiting for this squad for a long time. "My lords, tonight, just rest for a time. Food and drink have already been prepared for you," the supervisor for the prefectural city of Dako said respectfully. An expert of the 9th rank asked, "Recently, you haven't had any problems, have you?" None. The supervisor said respectfully. Good. You can leave now. Those attendants, after finishing preparing the food, can leave as well. We don't need them here. The expert of the 9th rank said. Yes. The supervisor said respectfully. Stella dismounted and headed directly into the residence, in search of a room to stay in. Sikalo Sakalo, call me when it is dinner time. He shut the door. The combatant of the 9th rank assented respectfully. Sikalo had been the captain of this squad, but with Stella's arrival, naturally he would listen to Stella in all matters. Sikalo closely inspected all of those servants. Seeing that they were all ordinary people, he no longer worried. Bring them out. Sikalo ordered. The 5 siblings were immediately brought down from the carriage. Fortunately, the carriage was quite spacious, as otherwise, those 5 enormous siblings wouldn't have been able to sit. Listen up, the 5 of you. If you keep shouting and making noise, the first time you do so, I'll break your arms. The second time, I'll cut off your tongues. Sikalo said coldly. His subordinates then removed the cloth gags from the mouths of those 5 siblings. The 5 siblings stared angrily at Sikalo, but they knew that Sikalo was the type of person who meant what he said. The 5 of them didn't plan to be so foolish as to make things harder for themselves. Sikalo, there will come the day when we 5 brothers will kill you. The eldest of the siblings, Barker Bake, said in a cold voice. Sikalo only let out a chuckle. Others might not be aware, but he knew that in the future, these 5 siblings would have been transformed into vessels for angels. As for their souls, they would have been destroyed. If you have the chance, I'll welcome you to try. Sikalo sneered in response. The Barker brothers had lived in the 18 northern duchies. They were orphans who had been raised by an old man, whom they called Grandpa. Grandpa owned an ordinary restaurant and made enough to raise the 5 of them. Ever since they were young, the 5 siblings had been extremely strong. Their grandpa had previously been a warrior in the army as well, and so ever since they were young, he had trained them. Unexpectedly, the 5 of them were astonishingly talented. When they were only 16 years of age, their muscular strength alone had allowed them to reach the 6th rank. By now, the 5 siblings were 30, and their physical strength had reached the 8th rank in power. After their grandpa had died, the 5 of them had joined the army. Within their duchy, which was one of the 18 northern duchies, these brothers were heroic figures, leading armies with impunity. In battles between duchies, warriors of the 8th rank could be considered top-level figures. These 5 brothers possessed incredibly durable bodies and also very fierce attack power. However, in the end, they were still discovered by the Radiant Church's forces. The Radiant Church immediately had dispatched 2 nearby experts of the 9th rank to lead people to capture them. They had resisted, but when they did, the Radiant Church's men had wiped out all of their families. The Barker siblings stared death at these men around them. The 5 siblings previously had 3 wives and 2 children amongst them. The 2 unmarried ones also had women they loved, but now everything had been destroyed by the Radiant Church. They've arrived. Linley had been paying attention to that particular courtyard every day. He saw that the previously empty manor was finally filled with people, and judging from the sound of it, quite a few people. Zisler's eyes flashed with a green light for a moment. Laughing sinisterly, we've waited for over 10 days. Finally, it's time. Linley, when should we act? Zisler looked over to him. They had definitive superiority of power. No matter when they acted, it would be successful. Later at night. Linley decided. Zisler nodded as well. The nearby black loud panther, Haru, was pretending to hide in the grass of the courtyard. The time passed quietly, until nightfall came. The prefectural city of Dako grew quieter and quieter. By nightfall, it was almost totally silent. Linley, who had been seated in the meditative position, suddenly opened his eyes. Let's go. Linley glanced at Zisler. Be careful. Don't worry. Zisler laughed self-confidently. I'm going to summon the undead right now. After just a few seconds, 2 golden-furred zombies appeared out of thin air. After a while longer, a humanoid figure wrapped in a black cloak appeared in the middle of the courtyard. What is this? Linley glanced perplexedly at the black-robed humanoid. An ancient wight of the peak stage 9th rank. Zisler laughed delightedly. Linley nodded. His side had many powerful experts, while the opponent only had 2 experts of the 9th rank. What's more, they were attacking from ambush. This battle wouldn't prove to be challenging at all. Let's go. Linley jumped directly over the wall, with Bebe and the Black Cloud Panther following close behind. Zisler, his 2 golden-furred zombies, and the ancient wight also followed behind Linley. Soon, they arrived at that residence. Let's act separately. I'll go deal with the guards overseeing those 5 siblings, and then together, we'll slaughter our way through each room. Linley said in a low voice. Let's move. The 5 Barker siblings were in one room. Outside the room were 2 warriors of the 8th rank standing guard. The 2 were fairly relaxed, casually scanning their surroundings while chatting. HRM? The moment before their deaths, they seemed to have sensed something, as they turned to look. But all they saw were 2 devilish flashes of purple light. Blood fountained out of 2 severed necks. Swish! Bebe, Haru, the ancient wight, and the 2 golden-furred zombies all charged towards the other rooms, while Linley hurriedly ran into the room with the 5 siblings. Upon entering the room, the Barker siblings stared at this monster in astonishment. His entire body was covered in black draconic scales, and spikes were emitting from his forehead and back. What's more, Linley had a pair of dark golden eyes which chilled the hearts of those who saw it. Wow, are you? No matter how bold Barker was, right now, he was rather shocked. But the only response to his question was a violet flash of sword light. Swish! Struck by Linley's blood-violet god's word, those dark golden ropes all split apart. After having mastered the imposability, Linley's usage of the blood-violet soft sword had reached a new level as well. Impose was not restricted by weapon. A fist could also summon the imposing power of the heavens. A saber or a knife could as well. Blood-violet was sharp to begin with. Now, with Linley's battle chi permeating it, chopping through the ropes was a very easy task. Seeing the ropes split open, the 5 siblings immediately understood that this man had come to rescue them. But before they even had a chance to express their thanks, suddenly, FCK off! An angry shout. Ah! A pain-filled scream. The look on Linley's face changed, and he hurriedly returned to the main courtyard. He saw the black-robed ancient wight moaning in pain on the ground, while the stone floor of the courtyard was now covered with cracks. Clearly, these were caused by the ancient wight smashing into the floor. In addition, there were hints of green blood on the ground as well. What is going on? Linley was shocked. Zisler, too, was very surprised. Not good. There's an expert here. The ancient wight was a peak stage combatant of the 9th rank, and its body was extremely durable. The expert in the room was able to injure it heavily and sent it flying in just one move. This was too terrifying. Bebe, Haru, come back. Linley mentally ordered. Bebe and Haru transformed into 2 black blurs as they returned to the courtyard. By this time, the 5 Barker brothers had walked out as well, but Linley kept his gaze focused on that room. HRMPH. With a cold sneer, a short, skinny man walked out from the room. His short silver hair looked like steel wire. This man looked very cold, especially when one saw his icy gaze. Stella glanced coldly at the ancient wight. A necromancer? Turning his head to look at Linley and Zisler, he sneered, I was wondering who it was. So it's the necromancer Zisler, and that so-called genius, the dragon blood warrior Linley. All the higher UPS of the Radiant Church were very familiar with Linley's dragon-formed appearance. Excellent. All of you are targets for the Radiant Church. Today, I'll take you all. Stella's lips quirked upwards, a cold smile appearing on his lips. Swish, swish. Linley's draconic tail swished about, slapping the ground. Suddenly, an earth-colored light covered the entire ground of the courtyard. Everyone in the courtyard felt their head momentarily grow dizzy. Zisler couldn't help but fall to one knee, but then immediately afterwards, another layer of earthen light covered Zisler, the Ancient White, the two golden-furred zombies, Bebe and Haru. They no longer were suffering from the effects of this gravitational power. Earth-style magic supergravity field. So it is as our reports say, not only are you a dragon blood warrior, you are a genius magus as well. Stella laughed calmly. Your gravitational field is around 8 times that of normal. I didn't expect that in just a few short years, you would advance from the 7th rank to the 8th rank. Sadly, a genius such as you is going to die today. Stella walked one step at a time towards Linley. Charge! Zisler let out a low shout. The two golden-furred zombies immediately let out deep growls, then charged towards Stella. At the same time, Zisler and Linley's allies all fled, as if by common agreement. A cold flash of sword light. The two golden-furred zombies were immediately chopped in half, collapsing within the courtyard. You want to flee? Stella, in the blink of an eye, appeared in the air in front of Linley's squad. He stood there in mid-air, wielding the long sword which he had just stained with the blood of the golden-furred zombies. It really is a saint-level combatant. Zisler laughed bitterly. Actually, earlier, when they had seen the peak stage 9th-ranked Ancient White be heavily injured in one blow, Linley had already known that things were not good. He knew that this person was most likely a saint-level. And now, they knew that to be a fact. Saint-level combatants were able to fly at an astonishing speed. There was no way they would be able to flee. Linley and Zisler exchanged glances. They knew exactly what sort of situation they had found themselves in. I thought today's activities would have been very stress-free. Who would have thought we'd run into a saint-level combatant? Linley was extremely unhappy about this. His dark golden eyes stared fixedly at Stella. No choice but to go all out. Book 8, The 10,000 Kilometer Journey Chapter 35, The Profound Truths of the Earth. The night was as cold as water. The cold wind of the deep night blew drearily. The squad that had belonged to Stella had been wiped out earlier. Now, only Stella remained. Linley's side had Linley, Bebe, Haru, Zisler, and the 5 Barker brothers. The opponent's side had only Stella. But without question, right now Linley's side was in the weaker position. Even fleeing would be very difficult. The supergravity field's effects are ground-based. The farther from the ground is, the less its influence is. Linley knew very well that once a saint-level combatant were to fly several dozen meters above the ground, they probably wouldn't feel the gravitational field at all. Right now, Stella was hovering roughly 10 or so meters above the ground. Even if he is impacted by the gravitational effect, at most it would be around 2 times normal gravity. As fast as lightning, Linley considered their options and how they could stay alive. Zisler said in a low voice, Linley, saint-level combatants can fly, but much like flying magical beasts, although they can fly very fast at high speeds, their turning speeds and aerial agility is only perhaps 1 or 2 times faster than combatants of the 9th rank. This reasoning was very simple. Just like when humans ran at top speed. They would be able to run in a straight line quite easily, but if they were to suddenly turn left, then suddenly turn right, then suddenly run backwards and forward again, you would be lucky to reach a speed of a third of your regular maximum speed. Linley understood this logic, but he hadn't thought of it just now. Now that he did, an idea flashed by Linley's mind. What, you want to resist? Stella was wielding that sword stained with green blood. Bebe, Haru, don't leave the supergravity field's area. Linley's dark golden eyes stared at Stella in the air. Saint-level combatants are very powerful, but he is a warrior. He has no way to counteract the effects of the supergravity field. If he wants, he can stay in the air. Once he reaches the ground, his speed will be halved or cut to a third. By then, he won't be any faster than me, nor will he be faster than you." Bebe and Hera both let out a low growl. But Zisler frowned. His speed wasn't that fast. "Let us face him. We 5 brothers definitely won't allow ourselves to hinder you, benefactor," the Barker brothers called out. The 5 siblings' muscles began to ripple and bulge, making them seem like terrifying magical beasts. Wielding the adamantine heavy sword in his hands, Linley stared at the mid-air Stella. "Don't be rash." Stella was in no rush to act either, calmly staring down at them. As a peak stage saint-level combatant, how could he be worried about being unable to deal with these people? "Speed?" Stella's sharp eyes stared coldly at Linley. "This tactic of yours might be useful against those who just entered the saint level, but unfortunately I reached the saint level centuries ago. Kid, the saint level isn't as simple as you seem to think it is. The saint level isn't just about using strength to brute force things, it requires a deeper understanding." Linley stood in front of everyone, sword in hand, staring coldly at Stella. This tactic was the only option available to him. Faced with a saint level's speed, he had no place to run. His only option was to remain in the supergravity field. Only then did he have a chance at life. Whoosh! Stella suddenly shot towards Linley like a released arrow, his black robe slightly fluttering with the wind. However, that long sword of his, covered in golden light, chopped towards Linley at a very ordinary speed. But once he struck out with his sword, a cold aura seemed to pervade the entire courtyard. Linley instantly felt as though he had entered a frozen realm. He had been totally surrounded by that freezing aura, while at the same time, the entire area seemed to have been locked by that aura. Although that sword was moving at an ordinary speed, it chopped towards Linley with an irresistible force. The impose level. HRMPH slowly yet inexorably, the adamantine heavy sword in Linley's hands began to move. Stella's eyes suddenly brightened. Slash! His ice-cold long sword suddenly split the air, increasing in speed tenfold. In the blink of an eye, it arrived near Linley's body. Linley's adamantine heavy sword was like a fish in water, agilely gliding through the air to block the ice-cold longsword. One was fast. The other, slow. But the strange thing was, the 2 swords intersected. Ruhuyumbal. There were no other sounds when the adamantine heavy sword and the ice-cold longsword struck each other. Only, the air itself suddenly shuddered. Linley's dark golden eyes continued to stare coldly at the opponent. Profound truths of the earth triple-layered waves. Stella only sensed a strange vibration being transmitted to him, as though 3 deep, powerful attacks were viciously attacking his heart. Boom! A terrifying noise exploded forth from Stella as his silver battle chi wildly exploded forth in all directions from Stella's body. Every single ray of battle chi easily shot through the surrounding buildings like needles. "Careful!" Linley roared loudly, immediately allowing the dragon blood battle chi in his own body to explode forth as well, frantically trying to block that omnidirectional blast of silvery battle chi, so as to protect the 5 Barker siblings behind him. But despite doing so, he wasn't able to totally protect everyone, as several strands of silvery battle chi still struck the 5 brothers on their bodies. Slash! Several dozen bloody lines were drawn on their bodies, but the 5 brothers had managed to survive. What astonishing defense! Linley sighed in amazement. Fortunately, Stella had only accidentally exploded his battle chi, resulting it in going in every which way. This was the only reason why the Barker siblings had not lost their lives, despite them being crisscrossed with bloody lines and wounds. As for Zisler, in front of him was a lance-wielding knight who was wearing a suit of heavy black armor. This was the Black Knight Captain, one of the 3 primary peak stage undead of the 9th rank under his command. Boom! The walls nearby all collapsed, and even the nearby manors were impacted by the vibrations. Some people were literally shaken to death by that omnidirectional blast of saint-level battle chi. Ah! Help! The nearby folks all began to scream in panic. An explosion such as this woke up quite a few people in the prefectural city of Daco as well, and all the nearby citizens began to flee their houses. Linley's group only stared solemnly at the mid-air Stella. A small hint of blood could be seen at the corner of Stella's lips. Stella wiped the blood off, and then stared at Linley in amazement. Finally, he sighed, "Linley, I didn't expect that you have already surpassed the level of utilizing the force of the heavens and the earth. Admirable, truly admirable." Utilizing the force of the heavens and the earth was what was known as impose. This was the level which ordinary saint levels reached. He received this attack of mine without any preparation, and yet he wasn't heavily wounded. Linley's heart had grown cold. Stella stared at Linley. He sighed, "Linley, I really feel that it is a pity. The current level of insight and understanding you have reached is roughly on par with most peak stage saint level combatants. Generally speaking, the reason that most peak stage 9th ranks are unable to break through to the saint level is because their insights and level of understanding is insufficient. But for you, the opposite is true. You possess a very high level of understanding, but your battle chi is far from being sufficient." Linley himself understood this logic as well. For a genius such as you to die like this really is a pity. Steele's eyes began to grow sharp and fierce again. In a cold voice, he said, "Linley, so as to show my respect for you, I will use my most powerful attack to deal with you, the icebound world. Actually, did you really think this supergravity field could affect me?" Stella sneered, and then his body began to radiate a terrifying silver light. Stella seemed to have transformed into the sun itself as his silvery light easily encompassed an area of several hundred square meters. "My supergravity field?" Linley found, to his astonishment, that the earth elemental essence he had used to create the supergravity field had been totally wiped away by that silvery light. Within several hundred meters, the area was the absolute domain of that silvery light. A 21-year-old could actually reach such a level. Stella continually sighed as well. Many people wouldn't be able to enter the saint level despite working at it for hundreds of years. But Linley? He was only 21, and yet he was at such a high level of understanding. "Bebe, Haru, get ready to flee," Linley transmitted mentally. "Boss." Bebe began to grow anxious. "Don't dawdle," Linley mentally roared angrily. Bebe and Haru roared with fury, but they had no choice either. Right now, neither the 5 Barker brothers nor Zisler knew what to say. Linley stood in front of all of them, staring at Stella. "My only choice is to use the higher levels of the profound truths of the earth, which I haven't truly mastered yet." Linley's dark golden eyes were fixed on his opponents. His adamantine heavy sword was in his hands. The triple-layered waves of the profound truths of the earth was only the basics. This most basic triple-layered waves, Linley was able to unleash with a 100 success right now. As for the higher-level attacks, Linley was much less confident. But right now, he had no choice but to give it a shot. "Aside from the profound truths of the earth, I also have that other, dangerous technique." Linley's eyes slowly began to turn red. "Gruol." Linley hunched over. Suddenly, his dragon scale-covered legs kicked off the ground, blasting his body upwards like an enormous boulder from a catapult, smashing viciously towards the mid-air Stella. "Go back down." Stella coldly swung his sword down at Linley. "Ah!" Linley suddenly howled. The adamantine heavy sword in his right hand chopped viciously at Stella with boundless strength and fury, while at the same time, his left hand flashed with a beautiful violet light. The divine artifact Blood Violet, God's Word. The same moment he had drawn Blood Violet, Linley had sent his spiritual energy into it, activating its terrifying, baleful presence. The entirety of Blood Violet was now totally covered by that bloody red light. Bam! With Linley at the center, a surge of red, baleful light enveloped Linley. Even people hundreds of meters away began to scream in terror, and even the 5 Barker siblings were so terrified that they started quivering. Ah! Even Zisler's heart was also filled with fear. From a distance, people who saw Linley in the air, surrounded by that baleful red aura, all felt that he definitely must be a fiendish god whom they dared not rebel against. As for Stella, who was closest to Linley, Stella only felt a terrifying baleful aura completely envelope him. This baleful aura was even more terrifying than the aura which had been given off by Dylan, the king of the mountain range of magical beasts. That dense baleful aura entered his body, striking directly at his mind and soul. Kill! Kill! Strange voices chanted non-stop in his mind. Stella felt as though he had returned to his youth, when he was a young beggar. He felt the same unbounded terror he had then, when each day he would be whipped by the leader of those men. But the hearts of saint-level combatants were extremely resolute. Ah! Stella suppressed the terror he felt, allowing the silver battle chi in his body to explode. Under this sort of situation, Stella was only able to utilize half of his power. Die! Linley's eyes were totally red, and he chopped down at Stella with his adamantine heavy sword. Bam! 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 The adamantine heavy sword collided 3 times with Stella's sword. Each time, Linley's right arm went numb from the shock, to the point where his hand was beginning to split open. Swish! Swish! In the same time that the adamantine heavy sword had attacked 3 times, Blood Violet had slashed over 10 times as well. Each of the strange attacks chopped at the same location. Although Stella's battle chi was very dense, the 8th sword blow had managed to pierce it. The 9th and 10th attacks actually pierced into Stella's muscles, but Stella's body was filled with that dense battle chi as well. Linley was unable to remain standing in mid-air. After delivering these 10 blows, he began to sink downwards towards the ground. HRMPH. Stella's eyes had already turned cold. To be forced by a mere peak stage combatant of the 9th rank to such a state was an absolute humiliation. Stella let out a growl. The icebound world. While falling, Linley saw that in the sky, a mirage of a shadow of a sword had split space-time itself. In the blink of an eye, it reached his body. At this moment this illusionary shadow of a sword seemed to have wiped away the entire world. In Linley's world, the only thing which existed was this illusionary sword. Linley didn't have any time to block. Zisler, the 5 Barker brothers, and those people watching from afar felt that the surrounding temperature had dropped to an extremely, terrifyingly low degree. Frost began to gather on their eyebrows. At the same time, the long sword in Stella's hands pierced towards Linley's heart. But Linley didn't react at all, allowing the long sword to pierce towards him at will. Master! Boss! Haru and Bebe, these 2 magical beasts, could only watch helplessly as Linley was about to be killed. Book 8, The 10,000 Kilometer Journey Chapter 36, True Experts. This sword attack by Stella, in terms of level, had surpassed that of the impose level. If the profound truths of the earth of the adamantine heavy sword was one sort of special attack, then this attack by Stella could be summarized using a single word: fast. I'm going to die? Linley was filled with resentment and an unwillingness to die. He wanted to live. He hadn't yet attained his goals. But unfortunately, in this world, many people died at times and places not of their choosing. After all, the world didn't revolve around any person. Many events would not cater to their desires. Boss! Bebe's tears had already begun to flow. But suddenly, Bebe was stunned. Not just Bebe. Haru, Zisler, the Black Knight captain, the 5 Barker brothers, and even the far-away group of onlookers were all stunned. What's going on? Everyone was flabbergasted. Linley was standing on the ground right now, while Stella was stabbing down towards Linley from the sky. His sword was very, very close to Linley's forehead. But the 2 of them didn't move, they were frozen in position. Even the drop of blood dripping down from Linley's injured right hand had frozen in mid-air. At this moment, it was as though the entirety of space-time around Linley and Stella had suddenly frozen. Objects, bodies, everything was paralyzed. Not just them. Bebe, Haru, Zisler, the 5 Barker siblings. All of them were frozen. Silence. A gloomy feeling. A terrible sense of loneliness and quiet. A look of astonishment was in Stella's eyes. Master Linley. Long time no see. A gentle, playful voice rang out. A seemingly 30-something-year-old man with long black hair, dressed in a loose robe, walked over. He looked the same as he always did, as though he had just woken up. Stella, right? All of you young fellows have reached the peak of the saint level. If I still didn't advance, I really would feel too ashamed to meet anyone. The lazy man dressed in the loose robe waved his hand. As though struck by a mountain, Stella was sent flying backwards as though he were a meteor. Bam! 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 Stella's body slammed through over 10 stone walls before finally hitting the ground. Linley, I haven't seen you in around 3 years, yes? The indolent man beamed at Linley. At this moment, Linley suddenly felt as though he could move again. Bebe, Haru, Zisler, and the 5 Barker brothers all regained their movement ability as well. That terrifying suppressive aura had vanished. Lord Caesar! Linley immediately paid his grateful respects. Linley felt more gratitude towards Caesar than he ever had before. Just now, he had truly felt it was totally hopeless. The man had just saved his life. How could he not be grateful? The person who had come was indeed Caesar. The king of killers. Zisler and the others all stared in astonishment, their mouths hanging open. What they had seen just then was simply too bizarre. And, faced with this man, Stella was totally unable to resist at all. The sound of stones rumbling could be heard. Stella climbed to his feet. Although his face was covered in dust and dirt, he still walked over, staring with disbelief at Caesar. This Stella was in total shock. This what? Haha, tell me. This what? Caesar grinned evilly at Stella. Stella had totally lost the demeanor and poise of an expert, only staring in Caesar in utter astonishment. He stammered, Godrealm. Godrealm? Linley and Zisler were both astonished as well. No wonder Stella had been so astonished. Just now, when everything had suddenly been frozen in place, was the legendary power of a Godrealm. Only a deity level could utilize this power. Right now, the Yulon continent had 4 supreme experts: War God O'Brien, the High Priest, and the kings of the Forest of Darkness and the mountain range of magical beasts. But now this king of killers, Caesar, had his own Godrealm? Haha, Caesar laughed. Lord Caesar! Linley and the others stared at Caesar in astonishment. Caesar beamed as he stroked his mustache. Don't be surprised. Stella, you and the others have been too arrogant. Hell, your old man, Caesar, reached the peak of the saint level over 5,000 years ago, and my speed of training was far faster than yours. I'm a genius, you know. Caesar spat out a bit of saliva, harumphing as he continued. But your old man was stuck at the peak of the saint level for over 5,000 years. If I still couldn't find a way to break through, I really would feel ashamed. Thus, 2 years ago, I finally broke through that tiny little barrier. Stella, Linley, Zisler, and the others all remained silent. Good heavens! Just like that, another deity-level combatant had been born. Linley found it understandable, actually. According to what Grandpa Doring had said, Caesar was a person from Doring Cowit's era, and even back then, he was a saint-level expert. To break through after 5,000 years and finally reach the deity level wasn't exactly something which happened out of nowhere. Lord Caesar! Stella bowed respectfully. Any deity-level combatant was worthy of respect. Upon reaching the deity level, one could ignore the existence of even empires. They were the true, highest powers of the land. It wouldn't be too hard for a deity-level combatant to wipe out the entire Holy Union, at most risking some serious wounds. What is it? Caesar looked at Stella. Stella said respectfully, Lord Caesar, all these years, the relationship between the Radiant Church and you, Lord Caesar, has been quite excellent. I wonder if Lord Caesar would be willing to join us in the Radiant Church. As long as you are willing, Lord Caesar, I believe His Holiness, the Holy Emperor, would be willing to accede to any request. This was a deity-level combatant. Most likely Haydns would even be willing to resign the Holy Emperorship to him. After all, with the deity-level combatant overseeing the Church, the status of the Radiant Church in the Yulan continent would be totally different. Not interested. Caesar snorted. Hell, over these years, your old man hasn't even been willing to manage the affairs of my own saber organization. And you want me to work on your behalf? Stella let out two awkward laughs. Right now, most likely Caesar could stand in front of the Holy Emperor, wag his finger in the man's nose, then curse at him, and the Holy Emperor wouldn't dare make a sound. This was the prestige of a deity-level combatant. Lord Caesar, if you are unwilling, we won't force it. But as for this Linley, he's killed many people of our Radiant Church. Lord Caesar, would you be willing? Bullshit. Caesar kicked Stella in the stomach, but clearly, Caesar didn't use any force with the kick. Linley is a master sculptor on the same level as Master Perilous and the others. I don't have many hobbies. One is beautiful women, the other is sculptures. You want to kill Master Linley in front of me? In your dreams. Stella no longer dared to say anything. Stella was extremely frustrated, because this mission of his had been to escort these 5 siblings back to the Radiant Church. Those 5 siblings all had bodies that were of the 8th rank in muscle power alone. Once the angels descended into them, they would transform into 5 peak stage saint-level combatants. Lord Caesar, that's fine. The Church will of course give you face, Lord Caesar. Stella squeezed out a smile. However, those 5 over there are people which our Church absolutely must have. No matter what the cost, we must take them back with us. I hope, Lord Caesar, you will agree. Oh, those 5? Take them. I don't know them anyhow. Caesar said casually. The Radiant Church had indeed treated him quite well over the years. Thus, Caesar would give the Radiant Church face as well. The 5 Barker brothers were astonished. Lord Caesar! Linley said frantically. Linley, do those 5 people have some sort of very important relationship with you? Caesar twisted his lips. Doesn't seem to be the case. Don't bother with them, then. Just enjoy your own life. Why bother about theirs? This was Caesar's temperament. He traveled alone, and acted as he pleased. Thank you, Lord Caesar. Stella was overjoyed. Caesar beamed at him, then turned to look at the 5 Barker brothers. Let me take a look and see who you are, that the Radiant Church would value you so highly. Caesar swept the 5 Barker brothers with his gaze. The 5 Barker brothers were indeed very eye-catching. Those 2.2-meter tall bodies and terrifyingly muscular forms. All of them looked like enormous bears. The 5 of you had best not resist. Stella walked over. Zisler and Linley wanted to stop him, but under Stella's cold gaze, Zisler and Linley could only laugh bitterly inside. How could they stop a peak stage saint-level combatant? Linley had just used both the baleful aura of the blood violet sword as well as the most powerful attacks of the adamantine heavy sword. Despite that, he had only given the opponent the most superficial of injuries. Linley, no matter what, we 5 brothers would like to thank you. Barker, the oldest of the 5 brothers, said loudly. These 5 fellows are pretty large, aren't they? Caesar's playful voice rang out. Stella immediately responded, yes, they are quite muscular. Caesar looked at the 5 men. His expression, originally playful, suddenly slowly sank into a brooding look. He even began to slowly walk towards the Barker brothers, one step at a time. "Why are you coming over?" the third of the 5 brothers, Hazer Haisha, growled. "Third bro, don't be rude." Barker growled back. "Big bro," the muscular man said unhappily. Caesar quietly stared at the 5 siblings. By his side, Stella was beginning to grow surprised. In a low voice, he asked, "Lord Caesar, what are you doing?" "Stella, you can leave now," Caesar said calmly. "Then Lord Caesar, I bid you farewell," Stella said respectfully. Then he immediately shouted towards the Barker siblings. "The 5 of you, walk in front. I said you can leave now. The 5 of them will remain behind," Caesar said in a cold voice. Stella was startled. Behind them, Linley and Zisler were both stunned as well. Even the 5 Barker brothers were shocked by these words. "Lord Caesar, you?" Stella stared at Caesar in astonishment. Just moments ago, Caesar had agreed to let him take the 5 of them away. But in the blink of an eye, things had changed. Caesar's expression was colder and grimmer than it had ever been. He stared coldly at Stella. "Stella! Listen clearly. Go back and tell Haydns this. If in the future, the Chich's men make any attempts on these 5 brothers, then don't blame me, Caesar, for not giving you face when I slaughter my way to your sacred isle." Hearing these words, Stella was totally shocked. "If you leave now, I'll pretend nothing happened today." Otherwise Caesar's eyes glittered with a cold light, and a terrifying murderous aura began to emanate from him. Caesar was the king of killers to begin with. He specialized in assassination. And now, Caesar was a deity-level combatant. Once Caesar made the decision to go against the Radiant Church, just by engaging in assassinations, he could probably kill all the saint-level combatants of the Radiant Church without suffering a single injury. No matter what, the Church could not afford to offend a deity-level combatant, much less a deity-level combatant who specialized in assassinations. All right. Stella's heart was filled with bitterness. It was also filled with rage. Rage at how overbearing and domineering Caesar was being. But Stella knew that the person in front of him was a deity-level combatant. He was qualified to be overbearing and domineering. He didn't dare to show his anger or to retaliate. "Then Lord Caesar, I bid you farewell." Stella bowed slightly, and then transformed into a blur, disappearing from the scene. Linley, Zisler, and the 5 Barker brothers stared at Caesar in puzzlement. In the past, Caesar was always so lazy and lackadaisical. So why did he grow so solemn upon seeing the 5 Barker brothers? Linley was extremely puzzled as well. Caesar glanced at Linley and his group. "Come with me and leave this place. There are quite a few onlookers here. Andy expects saint-level combatants have already detected the powerful ripples generated by this battle. There actually were no saint-level combatants in the prefectural city of Daco. The closest saint-level combatant was over 1,000 kilometers away. Even saint-level combatants would take quite a while to travel that sort of distance when flying." Linley and the others immediately followed Caesar away from the battlefield. That very night, they left the prefectural city of Daco and entered the mountain wilderness. Only then did Caesar have everyone come to a rest stop. "Well, spend the night here for now," Caesar sighed. Right now, Caesar didn't seem as carefree and unrestrained as he usually was. On the contrary, he seemed rather heartsick. Linley had the feeling that Caesar must have some sort of connection to those 5 siblings.